का यूएस का, तो वो तो बिल्कुल ही क्लियर था कि इट वाज ऑलमोस्ट लाइक ब्रिंगिंग यूक्रेन टू नेटो. Now that was the provocation. That was the continued provocation where Russia said, now we have to draw a line. We have to border pe aa gaye log, NATO. So we have to draw a line. So if you purely seek around ladai kar di, yes, true, Russia shouldn't have. It was wrong. But then it was not without provocation, not because it felt threatened. Now ye judgment hum nahi le sakte hain na. Russia kitna threatened hone pe युद्ध करेगा या अपना मिलिट्री मसल यूज करेगा, वो तो वही निर्णय कर सकते हैं. सही है गलत उसके कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस भी वही लेंगे, है ना. तो सेकेंडली यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल का जो परमानेंट सीट की बात कर रही हैं, तो यूएन सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल अधिकतर मुद्दों पे कोई निर्णय लेती नहीं है, तो फिर तो किसी का होने की जरूरत नहीं वहां पे सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल में. और इन पांचों के होते हुए भी लड़ाई हुई ना यूक्रेन में. सो हैव दे बीन एबल टू सॉल्व इट? आंसर इज नो, नंबर वन. Number two, have the other European countries like the three permanent members from the Western world, have they attacked Russia? Answer is no. So what was expected out of us? Actually, we have only burnished our credentials of getting into UN Security Council by being a voice of reason. You see, we are not trying to further add fuel to fire. और जब लड़ाई हो तो फिर वो भी जरूरी है, कुछ ऐसे लोग भी चाहिए जो टेम्परेचर्स को कूल करेंगे, है ना. देखिए साइड लेके टेम्परेचर बढ़ाना तो बहुत आसान है, बट टेम्परेचर्स को समाधान तो टेम्परेचर कूल करने पे निकलेगा ना. एम आई राइट? अगर समाधान डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी से निकालना है, अगर समाधान यूज से करना है तो सॉर्ट आउट कर लेंगे वो लोग, अगर कर सकते हैं तो. जिसकी कोई गुंजाइश नहीं है, बिकॉज बोथ आर न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स इतने हैं रशिया के पास कि उसके बाद ना यूरोप में कुछ बचेगा, ना अमेरिका में कुछ बचेगा, ना रशिया में कुछ बचेगा. ये लड़ाई हुई तो, अगर लड़ाई पूरी लड़ ली गई तो लड़ाई पूरी लड़ी जा सकती है, क्योंकि रिस्क बहुत ज्यादा है पूरी दुनिया के लिए. तो somebody has to cool the temperatures and somebody has to be the voice of reason. We are not prescriptive, we are not saying ये solution होना चाहिए. हमने ये तो नहीं कहा भी ये समाधान होना चाहिए, रशिया जाए वहां जाए क्या रखे क्या, हम उसमें कुछ नहीं पढ़ रहे. हम तो कह रहे डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी सॉर्ट करो, बैठ के बात करो, ये कह रहे हैं ना. और टेल मी what other advice could you give if you were there?
Sir, this is a reasonable stand. We are a voice of negotiation.
We are saying अब देखो, अब लड़ाई हो गई, अब बैठ के बात करो. कब तक लड़ोगे और क्या हासिल करोगे लड़ाई से? Because by attacking Ukraine, Russia has shown how deeply it was concerned. ठीक है ना. So एक फ्रेमवर्क बन गया है उस समाधान को ढूंढने का कि ये इस तरह से हमको आप ज्यादा पुश नहीं कर सकते. अब वो सब ने इतनी हाई पोजीशंस ले ली हैं, ऊंचे घोड़ों में बैठ गए हैं, थोड़ा वक्त लगेगा उनको. अब वो वक्त देना पड़ेगा आपको उनको, ठीक है ना. चलेगा खींचेगा, सबकी तकलीफें बढ़ेंगी, दोनों की, औरों की भी थोड़ी तकलीफें बढ़ेंगी, उसके बाद बात समझ में आएगी उनको. तो वी हैव टू बी द वॉइस ऑफ रीजन. और देन पीपल वुड आस्क, आप हम मध्यस्थता क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं? भाई जब कोई कहेगा तब करेंगे ना मध्यस्थता. If they ask us, तब करेंगे, but let them come to us. We don't have to start. We have already mentioned that कह चुके हम, तो इससे बात कर ली, उससे बात कर ली, हम कर रहे हैं जो क्वाइटली कर सकते हैं, जितना वो लोग चाहते हैं हमको करना, हम कर रहे हैं. आगे let them come to us कि भाई चलिए हम, we understand you are a voice of reason, you are impartial on this, so that we are showing our impartiality and we are securing our interest, because we have huge interest in good relations with Russia. Imagine, would we want to push Russia completely on China's side when 80% of weaponry today is of Russian origin? Main platforms, whether it's land platform, which is tanks, whether it's sea platform, which is aircraft, anti-aircraft, the only aircraft carriers of Russian origin. Am I right? Your nuclear submarines are of Russian origin. और आपके जो मेन एयरक्राफ्ट्स हैं वो भी रशियन ओरिजिन के हैं, हेलीकॉप्टर्स आपके रशियन ओरिजिन के. The most potent missiles you have, the BrahMos, is of joint collaboration. तो हमारा मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव तो हमारा इंटरेस्ट सिक्योर करना है, सिक्योरिटी एंड पीस एंड डेवलपमेंट का. Within that, whatever good we can do to solve the problem, we'll definitely try and solve it, and we are trying to do that. Have I answered your question?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir.
No, you're most welcome. This is important to understand because देखिए सवाल जब पूछे जाएंगे, please understand this thing in interview. This is very important. And don't ever make that mistake. I have given enough interviews to tell you. I have given 3 interviews, I can tell you. And I got into foreign studies purely because of the kind of marks I got in interview. So you need consistency. They will test your consistency. कि आपके thought process में consistency. देखिए, आपसे वो सहमत है नहीं है उनकी मर्जी है. हर एक कोई हरदम आप people can't be in agreement with you, but you must have a consistency of thought. वही मैं आपको सिखा रहा था, अंडरपिनिंग. हर बार सवाल आए, अगर आप कहें तो आप बताइए हमारे 2 ऑब्जेक्टिव हैं, पीस एंड डेवलपमेंट, पीस एंड प्रॉस्पेरिटी एंड डेवलपमेंट के और सिक्योरिटी के. हम हर निर्णय को उसके वो टच स्टोन है उस पर टच करके देखेंगे हम. उसके बाद अगर माइनर कंसेशंस भी करने हैं, उनको बैलेंस करना है कि भाई देखो यार, अमेरिका कह रहा है हमारा बहुत सिक्योरिटी की जरूरत है, ठीक है, थोड़ा हम रशिया को विल पुट अ लिटिल प्रेशर ऑन रशिया फॉर लैंग्वेज को. जब कह दिया हमने कि भाई दिस इज नॉट टाइम ऑफ वॉर. It wasn't criticism in a polite way. It was criticism in a polite way. So we've done that because we have huge equities with US. I mean, one of the biggest trading partners, biggest source of investments. 3.5 million Indians वहाँ पे हैं, and that's where your capital is going to come, and capital in technology is going to come, and that's the market you are actually looking at in a big way. So we can't sacrifice that. So you have to balance it, and people may agree with that balance, they may not agree with the balance. ठीक है ना? In hindsight, some of the balance may not prove to be correct, but that will always happen. ठीक है ना? जो निर्णय ले रहे हैं वो तो मैंने कहा वो तो बहुत एम्बिग्यूटी में निर्णय ले रहे हैं वो लोग. बड़ा ऑन द स्पॉट निर्णय लेने पड़ते हैं, जल्दी सोच के निर्णय लेने पड़ते हैं. कभी हो सकता है थोड़ा बहुत कैलिब्रेशन में हो जाए, but broadly the decisions we are taking are very sound, solid. You can calibrate ये नहीं, इस वर्ड की जगह ये वर्ड कर लेना चाहिए था, इस वक्त थोड़ा सा और कह सकते हैं, तो वो माइनर इश्यू चलते रहेंगे. वो विचार की बात है, हर एक के अपने विचार होते हैं इसमें, बट आवर ऑब्जेक्टिव इज वेरी क्लियर, हमारा डेवलपमेंट और हमारी सिक्योरिटी. चलो नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज. If there are no questions, we can take questions later. अभी तो टाइम और बहुत है. So we come to next slide, which is relations with the US. Now, this is one of the most important relationship that we have today. There's no doubt about it. It's very broad-based, multi-sectoral, trade, investments, defense, technology, energy, cybersecurity, high-tech, civil nuclear, space, you name it, we are advancing. And PM has personally invested heavily in this relationship. I mean, he has made 7 visits to the US. Now it's a global strategic partnership. US treats us as a major defense partner. It has done things for us which it at times doesn't even do for its NATO allies. I mean, it's in many cases so close. We have some founding agreements, and few of these are mentioned here, which will enable lots of other things to do as we go forward, and as we build greater confidence in each other and also greater interoperability. So वक्त लगेगा, ये वक्त के साथ आगे बढ़ेगा, वो हमको टेस्ट करेंगे, हम उनको टेस्ट करेंगे, and then it will go forward, because one thing is very clear, we don't want to sit in US lap, कि वो US की गोद में जाके बैठ गए, वो हम नहीं करेंगे. ठीक है ना? Too large a country, our ambitions are very different, and US understands it. If you have read what Kurt Campbell said, key White House official, they said, look, you know, they don't see US, India as an ally. They see India as a major power, and that's how we also see ourselves. That eventually we'll be a major power, and eventually we'll be what historically we were. China and India were the 2 major powers in the world till the 18th century. And that's where we have to get back. And it's just a matter of time. And I'm sure your generation will take us there. So we have 2+2 dialogue, joint naval exercises, you know, increasing defense purchases. Lots of things are happening on the defense side. And increasingly now the US Defense Department is the one which is weighing on our side. when State Department would like to do things differently, or even White House would like to do things differently, or have little more nuancing, US Defense Department weighs on our side. Bilateral trade in goods has gone up from 20 billion to about 145 billion, maybe more last year. And there's growing influence of 3.5 million diaspora in India, including government. I mean, at least 50 Fortune 500 companies are headed by Indians. So they all collectively bring an enormous amount of influence in the US and goodwill for India. So there's a huge space there within which we can operate and both strengthen relations, yet not get tied complete to US. And yet retain, as you said, our strategic autonomy. Next slide. Next slide, please. श्रुति जी स्लाइड बदलिएगा.
जी सर हैंग हो गया. एक मिनट में कर.
कोई बात नहीं.
Give me a few seconds.
आराम से. Okay, so getting back to US, Biden policies and implications for India. There is stress on multilateralism, which is good for India, but again, their multilateralism, more the multilateralism works for them. Like WTO, they are very dismissive of it. We would like WTO to be there. Yet, broadly, it's good for India. Easing on US visas, especially for work, etc., is good for India. More Indians are going right now. There's a little challenge because people are getting pink slips in US. But again, you see as a long-term trajectory, don't get too obsessed with what happens in a few months, because you're looking at policies in terms of long-term. So this is good for India. More Indians go there, more will stay back, and they become a pressure point and a huge resource base for India. Approach to China looks adversarial. That's the direction which is going. Will be complex, no doubt about it, because the more adversarial they become with China, the more they would want India to weigh in on their side and be seen sitting in their corner. And that will bring complexities for us. But overall, it's good for us, because if the more concerns they have for China, chances are the more they'll work with India because as a very credible partner and as a strong future partner. So their policies will be more supportive of both our development and our strong and our defense capabilities. Biden personally and some in the US Foreign Office have a soft corner for Pakistan, and those poses questions. The recent example of giving this waiver for about $450 million worth of spare parts and other things for F-16 is a very clear thing. I mean, nobody uses F-16 against terrorists. As we saw during the Balakot strike, it was F-16. We shot our back down. So this is going to happen. Those questions will remain. And on that, I'll speak later when we are concluding. On the larger frame of how we should be doing what we need to be doing. And then the concert of democracies, because you see, to box China, the ideological plank is that China is not a democracy, and so democracies of the world have to get together to fight this authoritarian regime. This is what they are trying to do. It's only working up to a point, understandably, because they themselves are so dependent upon China. I mean, look at the US trade deficit with China. It's more than $500 billion, maybe more. So they are buying so much from China, so there's a limited space that they have to maneuver in the short term. They are building both domestic manufacturing capacities. They are nudging their companies to invest more in others, so that dependence on China reduces. But that's at least 10 to 15 years at the minimum, if at all. So that will have its own implications and complications. And promotion of human rights it's overall good for us because, I mean, as a country where there's our constitution very strongly protects life and liberty of individuals. We have no problems about it, as long as it doesn't become selective and a political tool to unnecessarily needle other countries. So we have no problems on that. So that's the larger Biden policies and implications for India. But long-term trajectory, as I said, is again the context I said. Number one is feeling threatened from number two. Number two is getting aggressive, and we would, and whichever corner we stand on, our presence would be important, whichever corner we go. And we don't have to take a corner. We right now, this is what we are doing. We are playing sensibly. We don't want to get caught into this crossfire. We want to use this struggle between 1 and 2 to basically get the best out of both, and position ourselves as a very strong country with huge independent defense capabilities. Till we don't have that, mere economic power doesn't take you very far, as you would have seen with Germany and Japan. They have tremendous economic power, and yet they are so helpless in terms of defense. And now you can see when you read both, particularly Japan is now investing, is going to invest heavily in building defense capabilities, and Germany won't be far behind. It's just a matter of time. So we have understood it perhaps sooner than they understood, that you have to have very independent capacities in defense. Rest can be handled. Next slide, please. So Russia is a very old, time-tested partnership. We don't have any conflict of serious conflicts of interest. We have had 21 summits. 22nd this year did not take place. PM spoke to President Putin a few days back, but a physical summit is not taking place in 2022. Again, in a way, this is our polite way of showing our, I won't say displeasure, but a little concern is what Russia has done, sending a signal to Russia that perhaps Ukraine should have been handled differently. But it's not our call to tell them what to do. They are good friends, they stand by us, and that's what is important for us. In defense, as I've already mentioned, very close relations. All our platforms, major platforms on land, air, and sea are Russian-based. We are now trying to do things on our own, and all the three. LCA is an example. It will move to newer versions, bigger versions, but that's again, as I said, 15 to 20 years. It takes a lot of time. So we need 15 to 20 years to be fairly autonomous in our defense capabilities. Fairly, I'm just saying fairly autonomous. We may not be fully autonomous, but fairly autonomous in our defense capabilities. We need 15 to 20 years. And that's the time we need without getting caught into this, without getting caught into the crossfire between Russia and between China and US. Energy, hydrocarbons, nuclear power projects, and now we are the largest, Russia is the largest source of oil. That's because of cheap oil, and it serves our objectives. We have saved, I think, 2 months back, we have saved about $35 billion in our oil bill, purely by buying Russian oil. And now that we emerged as the largest, Russia is the largest source of oil for us. Every month we'll be saving a few $1 billion, which is a lot of money for us. $1 billion is about 8,000 crores. So if you save a few $1 billion, that's huge. And stress issues, Ukraine and strained relations with the West. Russia's strained relations with the West is a stress issue. The West will keep putting pressure on us. So, you know, it consumes a lot of political capital. It consumes a lot of mind space. So constantly you are trying to maneuver it, constantly you're trying to manage this relationship. That takes away, sucks up a lot of energy. And to an extent, other relationships don't move as fast as you'd like them to move. But that's how it is. I mean, that's the reality, and you deal with reality. Wishful thinking doesn't help. And Russia's strengthening relations with China. So there's other concern we have, not just our own defense dependence, but also because if we side completely with the West, then Russia would side completely with China. We don't want that situation. And it's of no interest to us. Next slide, please. China, that's again the big gorilla in the room. China pe rakhiye, haan. So, 62 war, it has cast a huge shadow on the relationship, and it's never come out of it. Huge dispute, territorial dispute is huge. 38,000 square kilometers in the JNK, 90,000 kilometers in eastern sector, huge border, long border, and China's much faster growth than ours. At the time of China's independence, our economy was larger, our per capita income was larger. We lost the plot, we lost the race. And since the 70s, China has just grown, and with US help. And now that's the problem. And the economy is 5 times of ours. Their defense capabilities are much more than ours. That's for sure. And that puts the stress on us. And it's something we have to contend with every day, as you would have seen what happened last week on 9th December in Taiwan. And this will keep happening because each will keep testing the other, and they will test us more than we will test them. And now we are showing increasing resoluteness, whether it was Doklam in 2017, 2020 Galwan, 2022 Tawang sector. This will keep happening, and we just have to accept it that that will perhaps be the new normal with China. They'll keep prodding us, and we will keep we'll show resoluteness, we'll show strength, and we'll stand our ground. So this will keep happening. We just have to accept that these relations will be testy ever so often. Yet on the trade side, sadly, I must say, in part the fault of all of us, that we still haven't given up the fascination with Chinese goods. We still continue to buy them, including Chinese brands. For the life of me, I never understood why. Why do we do it? Why should we buy Chinese brands? I don't. I mean, I don't buy one. I have not bought one Chinese product. Things could be made in China. They could have components. I can't take out components of a phone. But certainly, I'll not buy a Chinese brand. Even if you have to pay 5-10% extra for buying an Indian brand or some other brand. And just for God's sake, just do that at least. Stop buying Chinese brands. And the moment you do that, your manufacturing will grow. Okay, components will in the beginning come from China. That's okay, we'll live with that. But at least the brands will finish. The money is in brands, not in components. And we just don't do it. We'll still buy Xiaomi phones, we'll buy higher equipment. So it seems like those are fighting for us at the borders. I don't know what are they trying to defend. When the whole country is decided to continue to buy Chinese, I can understand raw materials. If we don't have, what are you going to do? Okay, buy it. Buy raw materials, buy components till you start making them. And some of them are not available. They'll only come from China. We'll live with that. As much as they'll live with getting some of the things from us. But at least don't buy their branded products. You build your own brands. How much time does it take? 10 years. Ultimately, all these Chinese brands got built in 10-15 years. If we just don't seem to do it. We only make statements. China ye kar raha hai, hum kya kar rahe hain? Ask yourself this question, what am I doing for my country? Anyway, so we have discussed incursions in Tawang sector. That's because, and if you see the history of Chinese negotiations with us, starting in 40s, late 40s, I mean, after independence, it was one of perfidy, one of using our weaknesses, not military weaknesses, just our mental strength and our clarity in thought, which we lacked. We were woolly-headed, and that's what they've been doing. They used perfidy, they played games with us all through. We don't seem to understand it. Now we are waking up to it, and that's so it's going to be very testing times. And one of the ways of testing times would be you'll see it on the border. There'll be skirmishes, they will do things, and we'll have to just be resolute about it. But at least in the meanwhile, we can stop, we can punish them by not buying their brands. Imagine if all of us decide we'll not buy Oppo phones and whatever Xiaomi and whatever else they make. You'll hit them big time. Stress issues, their support to Pakistan, they continue to do it. I mean, they are for now, what today, for almost 20 years now. I think we started in 1993. When we said, okay, let's demarcate the line of actual control. Let's just demarcate it. Line of actual control kahan pe? 20 years, they've not agreed to do that. Why? Because they just want to salami slice by salami slice, occupy whatever they think they want to keep, and then sit and negotiate as and when they decide to negotiate with us. Now, because we are standing up, the skirmishes are becoming, are more frequent perhaps, and are becoming starker, whether it was Galwan or recently in Tawang, and it will keep happening. In a way, it's a sign that we are standing up to it now, and we are not going to easily allow them to do it. But the nation has to stand up together. It just can't be left to defense forces. So you'll see the pressure from China coming, both through our neighbors, by and large, which we can handle. We don't have to get overly excited about it, which at times we tend to. So we have to keep a watchful eye. But through various means, including stress on the border. Next slide, please. Pakistan, again, is a complex relationship rooted in the partition, and Pakistan has just never reconciled because it was not based on any ideology. And reality is that for the freedom struggle, the people in Pakistan did very little. Even for creation of Pakistan, it was not the guys in Pakistan, the current Pakistan, who fought for it. It was the guys from UP and others places who fought for it, including Mr. Jinnah, who used to live in Bombay. He didn't live in Karachi. He lived in Bombay. So that's how it is. And the West has been supporting Pakistan ever since because, well, this is a very easy way of keeping India in check. So whether it's East or West, you need to understand one thing, we are alone. We are all by ourselves. And nobody is now going to allow us to become, Americans have seen what happened when they actually tried to build China against Russia. And now they have a monster which they don't know how to deal with. So they're not going to allow us to do it, to become a number one ever. And we have to be watchful of that. So they'll play on our, and that's understandable from their point of view. They're number one. Why would they allow anybody else to be number one? So they will use every trick in the book. So Pakistan is one of those tricks. First, to keep us in the check, and number two, to at that point of time, to ensure that the Russians or the Soviet Union did not get any foothold into the warm waters of Indian Ocean. And Pakistan has played that game very well. It was a member of SANTO. If you, well, those you wouldn't remember, most of you were not born. I mean, I was not born at that point of time. So, but that's also, Pakistan has great utility for the West. So at times we ask, how can they support them? Well, they're supporting them because they see it in their security interest, long-term interest of not allowing Russians to have warm water Indian Ocean access, or for India to ever become a very powerful country. You see, they've understood history more than we have understood. For historically, we were the first or second largest economy in the world, not for nothing. You just don't become number one or number two and remain number one, number two for centuries. There's something going for you. We just completely forgotten that. There are lots of things are going for us. We just have to put those pieces back together. And they don't want that to happen. So that's why they've been supporting Pakistan. They'll continue to support Pakistan to an extent. So we just have to understand it. And today they are in a dilemma. Against China, they need us. But to check us, they need Pakistan. And we have to understand this game and then play it accordingly. Rest of it is all known to you. I don't know if I have to, I mean, you've seen the slides here. What has changed now is in the last few years is the way we are handling Pakistan's nuclear blackmail. That has changed. So now we have no hesitations. If there is a attack on us in Pathankot, there'll be a Uri, and if there is a Pulwama, then there'll be a Balakot. So, and that's what is now keeping Pakistan under check. See it for yourself. We used to have bomb blasts right in Bombay, not just in 2008, but even before that, 90s, Hyderabad, including Jaipur, where I live, Delhi, all over the places. None now. जो हो रहा है सिर्फ खाली कश्मीर में हो रहा है. अब थोड़ा सा वापस little is happening in Punjab, and I think we need to be watchful of that. And again, wherever necessary, perhaps send a strong signal. But they understand it because India's approach and attitude has changed, and that depends upon how our leadership reacts to it. But I'll talk about this right at the end, just to give the whole panorama of our progress. But right now, let's just deal with these countries. So that's where we are with Pakistan. And we have built a lot of salience through deft diplomacy. When we made the changes in Article 370, nobody stood for Pakistan. Understanding, it's our internal matter. And so it's happening. They feel cornered. So the only trick they know is to make noises, scream at us, and unleash terrorism. Now terrorism, they're a little worried because there's a backlash. We hit back. So they're feeling cornered. So it'll happen. We just have to be patient with our approach. You're building pressure, keep building the pressure till they start tumbling. But just keep the pressure on. Don't expect outcomes, quick outcomes. At times there's the silly debate that one hears. कि 2 साल हो गए यूके में इसमें जम्मू एंड कश्मीर आर्टिकल 370 से कुछ नहीं बदला, और जो 17 साल तक नहीं बदल पाया, 2 साल में कैसे बदलेगा? I mean, ultimately the old system lasted for 70 years. How do you expect to change everything in 2 years? It takes time. Be patient about it. You've done the right things. Now just pursue, just persevere. It will happen. Those are the right things to do. But be patient about it. But that's what at times we lose. Either in cacophony or in this silly TV debates, but we just have to be patient. We are doing the right things, be patient about it. Next slide, please. Sri Lanka, again, right now it's in news because Sri Lanka was perhaps the best performing economy and the best human development index in South Asia. But some silly decisions by them. And the economy is right now in tailspin. I mean, they just don't know how to handle it. Nobody knows how to handle it. So that's a very clear example of being careful and sensible in using foreign resources or foreign loan and foreign support in your economic development. So खाना भी उतना ही खाना चाहिए ना digest कर सके. जब मुफ्त का मिल जाए तो ज़्यादा खाना नहीं खा सकते, पेट खराब हो जाता है. Just because मुफ्त का थोड़ी का the normal diet से 4 गुना ज़्यादा खा लेंगे and hope that you'll be all right. They made many mistakes, but hopefully they're smart. They'll figure out. It will take a little while, but if they're sensible, they'll come out of it. But our complexities are with because of the Tamils there, and in part because of the base that they're given to China, and they keep playing China against us. But I think eventually they understand that this game can't continue for very long. Eventually, we are just 25 kilometers away. China is 2,000 kilometers away. And once the equation between India and China changes, I mean, Sri Lanka knows what could be the consequences. I'm sure they understand it. We'll see where it goes. But we have been very gentle. We have not made any threatening noises. We have been firm on some cases which can't be discussed publicly, but they are, I mean, by and large, they will fall in place, just a matter of time. You just have to be patient about it. Next slide. Bangladesh. Yeah, Natasha, or maybe can I just finish the neighbors and then we can have questions. Bangladesh is the only other neighbor left. I've not covered every neighbor because it will take forever. So rest, there are no major issues left. So Bangladesh, again, I think this is right now, along with Bhutan, the best relationship we have with our neighbors. And as long as Sheikh Hasina remains there, and we continue to show generosity, and we continue to show goodwill, which we are doing in ample measure, I think the relationship will remain very good. There will be issues. Water is the issue. It is an emotive issue more than a real issue. It's the emotive issue. We have to handle emotive issues little deftly, little carefully, and with some sense of generosity, and we have done all that. And we are continuing to do all that, and I'm sure we'll continue to do all that. So that's broadly the relationship with Bangladesh. If the regime changes there from Sheikh Hasina, then there'll be question marks. And so the smart thing for us, like with any other neighbor, would be build as many complementarities as possible. Because once you build a strong network of complementarities, even if there is an adverse government, see, the government can take decisions there which will hurt us. Maybe they can take those decisions, like in Pakistan they do. But they can't take decisions which is going to hurt their people, because eventually they have to go and fight elections after 5 years. And that is one of the reasons that Pakistan does not want strong trade ties with us. Because then you create a network of people who benefit from trade with India, whether importers or exporters. They both benefit. That's why you import, because you benefit. And that's why you export, because you benefit. So as long as that set of people is there, and that constituency is large, it will not allow you to disturb the relationship too much. And that is the problem that you see with US-China relations today. I mean, the Walmarts of US are not going to allow US government to really shake the relationship dramatically. Slowly, yes, but then it's not going to affect their trade when they built alternative centers of imports, cheap imports, etc., alternative suppliers. Then they will say, okay, now you go ahead. But Walmart is not going to allow the US government to demolish it. At least they will try, they don't get demolished, or Apple will not allow that to happen. Now, China has built those huge complementarities. So the trick for us is to build those huge complementarities and convergences with Bangladesh, not just Bangladesh, all our neighbors, where individual viewpoints of regimes or governments can only affect the relationship within a limited space. Because then others will stand up and say, "Kya kar rahe hain? Band kijiye isko. हमारी सारी फैक्ट्री बंद हो जाएगी, रॉ मटेरियल इंडिया से आता है, हमारा पूरा फैक्ट्री बंद हो जाएगा, वो सारा एक्सपोर्ट इंडिया को जाता है." And that's a huge constituency in democracy. So that's what we have to focus on. That's what we are trying to focus. Next slide. Next slide, please. Nepal, and then I think with their neighbors. So Nepal is a very special case for us. It's a huge, is an open border. Nepalese people have what we call same treatment as we have for Indians. So theoretically, a Nepalese officer, a person of Nepalese origin, could become the army chief of India. Only a few decades back, they were prevented from joining IAS, IPS, and foreign service. But your chief, if I'm not mistaken, even today, the chief of Central Board of Direct Taxes and Direct Taxes could be Nepalese, or Nepalese origin. And we have had very senior military officers of Nepalese origin in India. So that's the kind of, I'm just trying to tell you what proximity we have at the people-to-people level. But because of the communist parties there, the multiple communist parties there, being very powerful because of the poverty in the country, they've caused a lot of stress in bilateral relationship in recent years. So we have been patient about it. We have not reacted harshly, and then we've just taken some of the hits on our chin. कि लोगों को नाराज नहीं करो, इवेंचुअली बहुत नजदीक के संबंध हैं, धर्म के संबंध हैं, संस्कृति के संबंध हैं, शादी ब्याह के संबंध हैं, they will all settle down. So that's by and large has settled. Sher Bahadur Deva was, because of Nepalese Congress and the whole history of Nepalese Congress being close to India, And fact of matter is Nepalese Congress fought for India's independence. And some of them, the earlier leaders of Nepalese Congress, they went to jail for India's independence. That's the kind of relationship with Nepalese Congress. So it's all now stabilizing, but it will take a little more time till the democracy in Nepal settles. You see, it's a new, the democracy is 2008. This is about 14 years, and they've had so many governments coming and going, and so many prime ministers. It's never stabilized. So give it some time. We have to be patient about it. We have to take some sillinesses on their part and digest it and just laugh it off, even though at times it's not laughable. But then that's, as I said, take a step back at times, like foxtrot, take a step on the side, just let things happen, be patient, it will all solve, because reaction would cause far more damage than taking it on the chin. That's Nepal for you. The stress issues on Nepal are destabilized political situation, because even if Sher Bahadur Devba's new government is dependent upon Prachanda, who's a hardcore communist and who had enough anti-India credentials in the past. So, the ability of Sher Bahadur Devba and the Nepalese Congress to build relationships, bring it to closer proximity is stymied from within. And then outside is the CPM UML of the former Prime Minister, Oli. So limitation here about which we just have to, as I said, just occasionally take those things, the sillinesses in your stride and wait for times to come to settle. Until then, just contain the damage and keep building on, as I said, keep building on convergences and keep building on complementarities. And once you do that, for any government to shake it beyond a point is very difficult. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now let me stop here up to this point. So I've dealt with the major powers, the three major powers, Russia, US and China, and four neighbors, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal, main ones. Bhutan relationship is very good, so not much needs to be said. Maldives is also right now working all right. This new government is sensitive to our interests, so that's working all right. And Afghanistan is a neighbor at Wakhan corridor, but that's a different story. All of you know it. I really don't think there's much that I can add to what you guys know. So now, any questions at this stage? So some of you ask questions on the chat box. I'm not following the chat box, so can you just take the flags and can you just moderate it and give the turn to whoever you can, because you can see the whole screen. I really can't see whoever raised the hand. So those who sent questions in the chat box, please raise your hand and then we will take the questions right now. But please ask questions of what we've dealt with. Don't ask for what you want to know for other things. That you keep after I finish, as I missed out something. Okay. सुकृति जी प्लीज आप मॉडरेट कर दीजिए, जिसको आप बोलना चाहें उनका माइक अनम्यूट कर दीजिए.
Okay. Natasha, please ask your question.
So you just mentioned about South Asia. So recently we see that Bangladesh economy is also on the verge of collapse, not in the sense a total collapse, but they have asked money from IMF. And even in Sri Lanka, we have seen the economic crisis. In Pakistan, there is political instability. So when you just mentioned that India needs to build complementarities and convergences, what should be India's policy towards South Asia, considering the recent economic crisis? In what all areas does India need to build complementarities and convergences?
So look, what have we done for Sri Lanka? Let's start with Sri Lanka. Okay, we gave massive aid to them. I think by now we already given them $3 billion plus, which is a lot of money for us and a lot of money for a small country. I mean, at the end of Sri Lanka is a small country in terms of population or geographical size. So we've done all that we could, and we'll do a little bit more also. But if they still pinprick you through allowing Chinese ships to come, etc., then you also have to show displeasure. So right now, if you see, we have taken a little hands off on that side of giving additional support. Is because of that. We want to see the problem with neighbors and problem with, again, it's a question of thinking. Now, some of the neighbors think that they are the balancing factor between India and China, which is all nonsense. I mean, if India can take on China and stand its ground, it can take on China plus Sri Lanka. We'll deal with that also. I'm just giving an example, and very, very bluntly. Now, some of them feel that India is so desperate, and that's why your signaling also has to be very correct. So they think that we are actually worried that if they side with China, we'll be in serious difficulty. So we have to disabuse their mind of this. That we can deal with China, we'll deal with China and Maldives, or we'll deal with China and Sri Lanka. We'll deal with that also. So we are helping you because you're a neighbor. We want you to, as our economy grows, we want you to be prosperous. Because a poor neighbor is no good to you. I mean, ultimately, so many Bangladeshis came. Some of them came because it was there was persecution of Hindus there. So they came to India to save themselves. Others came because Bangladesh wasn't till 10, 15 years back a great economic prospect. So they came to India in search of jobs little better than what they had. So it's in your interest. But this is a game you have to play it carefully because it's a mind sport also. The other guy should not feel that we are doing out of desperation or because we are afraid that Sri Lanka agar मान लो चला गया चीन का हमारा क्या होगा. So you see, we have to disabuse the mind के कुछ नहीं होगा, ठीक है ना? हम कर लेंगे, आपको भी डील कर लेंगे, उनको भी डील कर लेंगे. We are helping you because you are a neighbor. We want you to be prosperous. We want you to benefit from our growth, and we want you to grow up. I mean, that's because we have no desire of your territory. We want you to be prosperous. It does us no harm. It does us good, in fact. But they read the signals differently. See, that's the problem, and that's the problem of a very talkative democracy. So, they actually start believing that they are the deciding factor on our security, on our future. That's the problem with neighbors. So we have done a lot with the Sri Lanka, as I mentioned to you already. If you see earlier part of this year, we gave about $3 billion plus, and maybe और थोड़ा और दे रहे हैं जो भी कर सकते हैं करेंगे. And we gave oil. We have done a lot of things, and same with Bangladesh. And we'll continue to do. Look, we can't single-handedly salvage their economies. वो तो possible नहीं है. Ultimately, Bangladesh is a country of 15-17 crore people. You can't do it. It's 10-12% of the population. But we'll help them, and they don't need it. They just need some more help, some accommodation right now, because you see, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka were, in a sense, one or two trick puppies. Bangladesh was mainly dependent upon textiles, and they have done a phenomenal job of it. They're great lessons for us to learn. Great lessons for us to learn. The kind of industry that they've built without having any cotton. Okay. So they imported all the cotton from India, all the raw materials, yarn from India, and they built a huge garment industry, huge, benefiting, of course, from the concessions they got as least developed countries. But they worked very hard on it. Same thing, Sri Lanka. They used textiles, then they used a bit of agriculture, tea. Today, the best brand, best known tea, not is the best tea, but best known tea all over the world is Sri Lanka. The brand is Sri Lanka. So they've been a huge brand. So we will help them as much as we can, and we should. That's our interest also. Besides, it's in their interest. And we are trying to do that within our means. But you see, all of them became very profligate. And they're dependent on just one or two or three sectors. You see, our economy is not dependent upon just one or two or three sectors. It's far more broad-based. So it can take some of the shocks relatively easily. Theirs cannot. And Sri Lanka made a very major mistake. You see, they moved to a completely non-fertilizer, non-chemical based agriculture very quickly. There was no market, and the domestic production collapsed. So now a country which was exporting food is importing food. So first, all the domestic income of farmers has collapsed, and then you need money to import food. So the double whammy, which they caused on themselves, because they thought that purely by supplying natural fruits and vegetables and what you call pesticides, insecticide free, they'll be able to make enormous amount of money, but it happens slowly. And there has to be a capacity in the world to be absorbed, to be able to absorb so much of it. And the economies. So they made some mistakes. They're paying a price for it. Hopefully, I mean, the world will help them. The talks are going on. And eventually, I'm sure some solution will emerge. It will be maybe 5 years, 10 years trudge for them before they come out. So that's where it is. Have I answered the question now? Insofar as Pakistan is concerned, I don't think this might be, we don't have any desire to bail them out. Let them sink, let them pay for their sins. This does us no harm. So there'll be different treatment of different neighbors. We have no desire to bail out Pakistan, none whatsoever.
Okay, next question by Shubham.
Yes, Shubham. Shubham, you'll have to come on the screen. Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Regarding Indo-US relationship, you said that it's going very well with very few stress factors. But one of the foreign policy objectives of India is to have multipolar world, with India being one of the poles. But at the same time, US would want to be a hegemon power to shape the international order. So how do we balance these two objectives, India being one of the pole and US maintaining a dominant power?
Look, you know, when you cannot be the only pole, then you want the poles to multiply. Am I right? That makes sense, no? If you could be number one, you'd want to be number one. Okay?
Yes.
But we are still a far distance from being number one. So no point of saying I want to be number one. That's the easiest way of pissing off US and making sure that they don't ever allow you to become number three. I said, you know, ambiguity. Why do you want to have to start revealing your hand, Kamito? We want to eventually become world number one power. At least you must have the ambition to do it. And if not my generation, certainly not my generation, your generation can do it in the next 30 years, 40 years. It won't take more than that if we handle it carefully. So what else are you going to say? Multipole, no?
Yes, sir.
And what does multipole mean? That just one or two countries in the world can't decide the fate of others.
Yes,
and
sir.
that we also need to be heard. What's wrong with that?
So my second question was regarding the crude oil purchase from Russia. So how can we justify buying crude oil from sanctioned Russia and not sanctioned Iran?
Who was sanctioned? We have sanctioned Russia.
No, we backed out of.
No, 8 minutes. Just a minute. No, just a minute. We have to be serious about it. Okay, there are no UN sanctions.
Yes,
Am
sir.
I right? No
Yes,
UN
sir.
sanctions. So should we treat US as UN also? That they can decide hum kisse kya kharidenge? Because they in their wisdom have decided. Have they sanctioned the Europeans for buying Russian oil?
So my question is different. How can we justify buying oil from Russia and not Iran? We backed out of Iran when US pressured us and not Russia.
Again, it's very simple. You see, you have to understand the oil business. And please understand. So let me explain to you now that you asked this question, a valid question. It's very simple. You see, when you buy Iranian oil, the shipping is pressurized. Nobody wants to ship Iranian oil because they'll cause problems. And we buy Iranian oil. It's not that we don't buy. We buy some Iranian oil. We buy quite a bit of it. Second problem is the refineries are worried because all the refineries are reinsured in US, including the Reliance refinery and the government of India, all the refineries are reinsured. Okay, because refinery is such a huge investment. Each refinery would be 10, 15, 20, 30 billion dollars. No Indian insurance company can insure it. Should something happen, all the Indian insurance companies will go bankrupt next day. So they reinsure it. Now, if the reinsurance claim is not settled because US has sanctioned it, now who's going to run that risk? Do you think Reliance will run the risk? So Reliance छोड़ो यार मतलब oil का वहीं से कहीं और से ले लो. Why would I risk my refinery? कुछ हो गया तो पैसा नहीं मिलेगा मेरे को वापस इंश्योरेंस का. ठीक है ना? जहाज में गया जहाज इंश्योरेंस नहीं होगा. ठीक है? Then Reliance sells so much to US. Reliance is a very major exporter. I'm just giving one example to America. Reliance can refine products. US is one of the major markets. So if your major market, your major buyer gets upset with you just because you are supporting somebody who's needling him, you say, "Abhi ab chodo usse mat kharido yaar, apne khali Reliance US ko becho na, bade buyer ko kyun naraj karte ho? Aap bhi karenge na ye." That's what we are doing. But Russia is a different league altogether. You have huge defense and political interest in Russia. And so you simply say, make a naraj, we'll deal with that also. Now, which is not the case with Iran. To the same magnitude, yet you're working with Iran. Chabahar port bana hai na? America sanction के बाद Chabahar port बना है, बन रहा नहीं बन रहा है. जो अगर आप नॉर्थ साउथ कॉरिडोर जो बन रहा है, इंटरनेशनल नॉर्थ साउथ कॉरिडोर, ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉरिडोर, इट गोज बाय ईरान ना, कर रहे हैं ना, हम लोग थोड़े रुके हुए हैं. बट यू सी, यू जस्ट टेक अ कैलकुलेटेड रिस्क. किस हद तक जाना है, ठीक है ना? Because then at the end of the day, if you have to choose between your relationship, preserving your relationship between Iran or US, what would you preserve?
US.
That's what, so then you just take it up to a point. And that is because you just don't have the kind of might or clout as US. So you have to wait your time till you can build that, and then the more clout you have, the less you'll be vulnerable and the less you'll be pressured. And so the multipolar world helps in that, because there's no one single dominant power. So as a middle power country, right now, that's where we are. We need 10 such powers so that no one single power can determine or impact your decision making. But once you become number 2 or number 3, number 1, then you'll be singing a different tune. Aap bolenge hamari baat suno. That's the nature. Next question. Have I answered the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next question.
Akansha, please ask your question. Okay. Akansha is not there.
Shubham.
Shubham has asked this question, sir.
He has asked this question. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody
Akansha.
else? Otherwise, you go back to the slides and complete the presentation.
Okay. So I think I'll go back to the slides, sir.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. I had one question. So my question was, is India's current strategic autonomy strategy a sustainable one? And is it possible that if we continue down this route, we would not have any true allies in the future?
No. Look, again, please understand this. Please understand this thing. Most of the relationships are based on interest, convergence of interests. Okay.
Yes, sir.
It was the same US which supplied pattern tanks to Pakistan and saber jets during the 65 war and again in 71 war. It was the same US which sent the 7th Fleet against us during the Bangladesh war. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Now the same US is giving you the most advanced defense technology. They're willing to give you very, very substantive defense technologies. Why? India has not changed. We were the democracy then, we are a democracy now. US has not changed. It was a democracy then, it's a democracy now. There is this convergence of interests. Their interests and our interests converge. And the smart thing, as I told you, is to build convergence of interests, because the more convergence of interests, the less the relationship becomes volatile. So today there is a convergence of interest between India and US, because as I've told you in the global context, the number 1 power, which is US, is feeling threatened from number 2 power. And both want us on their side.
All right, so I got the answer. Thank you.
China wants to threaten us to be on his side. So far, okay, that's what they think that might work. That at least we'll remain neutral, if not side with it. And US is luring us to his side, but each for their interests. And we sit in our interest because we feel our threat right now is from China. And if US is on our corner, to that extent, it helps. So there's a convergence of interest on both sides. Am I right? Have I explained to you whether you agree or not?
Yes, I got the answer.
Any further questions on this? So, okay, we'll quickly run through Gulf region. It's important. Actually, it's very important. Sadly, it was neglected in the past, but in the past 5-7 years, we actually put in a lot of diplomatic capital in building this relationship. So it's the largest trading partner. Largest source of energy, both oil and gas, home to more than 8 million Indians. The numbers are increasing every day. I mean, literally every day. Largest source of remittances, $50 billion is recorded, and all that comes through Hawala is different, of which I have, of course, no figures. So I can only guess at best. Having lived in one of the Gulf countries, yes, that's true. I mean, a lot of it comes like that. Potential to become the largest source of investments. UAE is pumping in money in India big time, and just a matter of time, and Saudi Arabia will also do it. And they are the two, and Kuwait does it. Kuwait is another very rich country. They do it, but they do it through direct investment, through in stock market operations, so through portfolio investments. But they're also putting a lot of money into India. There's a renewed trust to relations because you see, and I'll tell you why. So it's just not happening by accident. You see, one of you had mentioned this point, and valid point, that US interest in Gulf was twofold. In the past, it was US was dependent upon its oil requirements on the Gulf, some of its oil requirements. US is a very major oil producer. But before they knew how to crack the shale gas, they were huge net importers of oil, and a lot of it was coming from the Gulf. So for the energy security, it was important. And secondly, oil was such an important resource then. Well, it still is, but perhaps not as salient because electric vehicles will take away some of its salience in the future. That control over it was very important. And the control should not fall into any other hands, because then that will become a security issue. Now, US has become a net exporter of oil. And in any case, between US, Canada, and the South America, there's enough oil and gas that they don't need any oil from anywhere else, because US is a net exporter today. But even if it isn't, they can take care of it. So that there's no dependence on Gulf oil. So to that extent, the dependence has reduced substantially. And hence the US attitude towards Gulf also has changed, because if you don't have huge states, they don't invest huge money and huge military or huge capital. That's how it is. Why is US now moving towards Asia? Because they feel threatened with China. Earlier they're threatened with Russia. So the whole battleground, literally and figuratively, was Europe. And so NATO, etc., everything came into being, and they made massive investments in NATO through Marshall Plan initially, not NATO, but European countries. Today, they don't see that need. So today they see the threat coming from China. So they are more preoccupied, and they are basically positioning all the resources in that direction. Now, that is creating a little bit of vacuum in the Gulf. Now, who is going to stabilize the Gulf? You see, you spend your time, your money, your energy, your men, your guns only on issues that are of interest to you. Okay? So if there's a fight on Galwan, we'll go and fight it. But if there's a fight in Ukraine, we will throw words. That's what we are going to do. We are not going to send our men or guns or aircraft there, because of no particular consequence to us significantly. Our borders are not threatened. Nothing serious is going to happen to us, whichever way it goes. Now, Gulf region, we have huge interest. I've just explained to you. And because we have huge interest, now we are making that political commitment and eventually defense commitment. Because I have so much of interest, I can't let it become turbulent. I mean, imagine, for God's sake, just imagine, if you have to evacuate the 1.2 million Indians from Kuwait now. I mean, we evacuated 200,000 Indians from Kuwait 20 years back, and it was a Herculean task. It was the world's biggest evacuation then. We don't even take pride in what we've been able to do. We have made we have not once, but number of times we have done the world's largest evacuations without any problems. I mean, huge economic stress, cost, but we've done it. We've shown that ability to do it. So we don't want that to happen in the Gulf region. We want the Gulf to be stable. It's a huge market for us. It's a huge source of capital for us. It's a huge source of remittances, huge source of employment for us. We want it to be stable. And you want it to be stable. And you see that there's a vacuum being created, and you have the capacity slowly to fill that vacuum, you do it. And the process is to engage with those countries, give them the confidence that yes, you'll stand by them, and give them the confidence that you have the capacity to do it. And you are trustworthy. But that takes time. And just by telling you I'm honest, you're not going to believe me. You're going to test me 10 times. Maybe you'll give me 1,000 rupees and then say whether I pick it or I leave it and give it back to you. You'll try something else. You don't trust somebody with your house without knowing the person, without testing them. So that's what is happening now. That is why you see so much of effort being made by UAE into India and India into UAE, or Saudi Arabia into India and India, because they understand we have the stakes there to keep it stable. And we have now a growing capacity. Full capacity answer is no, we don't, but we'll have it. And there's, if and when America chooses to further, say, distance itself, or perhaps not play a very neutral and or a prescriptive role, they now increasingly are depending upon us. And that's a fundamental change in the relationship. Earlier it was employment of Indians, buying of oil, sending chawal and whatever else, and getting some remittances. Now it's moved to keeping the region stable, to keeping it secure, keeping it safe, playing that role. So this is in terms of complexion, complete different complexion in which it is going. But it will take another 20 years, because we also have to have those capacities, the defense capacities, their trust in us, which takes time to build, and we are building them. So it's just a fundamentally transformed relationship, as I've explained to you. Next slide, please. The rest is all given. I mean, they're all facts which you guys know. Africa, this I think is becoming the next battleground between China and others, and we'll play increasing role there, because we have a huge footprint there. I mean, there's hardly a African country where there are no Indians, including Francophone Africa and including Lusophone Africa. Forget about English-speaking Africa, where of course we have been there historically. And it's a 1.2 billion people live there. It has humongous resources. It can become our granary later on. See, we are 1/6 of humanity sitting on 2.2% of land. Huge mismatch. So as your economy grows and as your food consumption grows and as people eat more fresh fruits and vegetables and things like those, where will it come from? Your land and your water resources may not be able to support it. Today we can, if we use the right technologies, but in future perhaps we may not be able to. Africa will become your granary. You have to start investing there. You need enormous amount of raw materials today for your industries. Africa will be the source. So we are doing that. We are making those investments in Africa. The India-Africa Forum Summit, the 4th of which will now take place, is a step in that direction. And with each African country, and depending on its importance and resource profiles and other things, we are investing heavily in Africa. So, yeah, you pose a question. Maybe I'll just finish and then take the question, or somebody has asked this question. Let me answer that. About China and the visit of Xi Jinping to China, to Riyadh, and the meeting with all of them. You see, again, because America became too prescriptive. You see, what was the American angst, or the angst of Biden personally, perhaps? I don't know whether it was personally, but Democratic Party or some of them, was that Khashoggi was killed. The journalist was killed in Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey. Of course, nobody can defend that if this is correct. But the fact is, America's hands are not as clean as they want to claim. I mean, they killed Allende in Chile. God knows how many people they've killed. Okay. So who are there to tell others not to do all that? You see, it doesn't come out in the open, but those who follow these things, they understand. People understand that. They ask those questions. So if America wants to be prescriptive, Saudi Arabia under this regime doesn't want to be prescriptive. They don't want to take American prescriptions. So when they should increase oil supplies, when they should reduce oil supplies. So America wants them to increase oil supplies because oil prices have gone up. But the higher the prices, the better for Saudi Arabia. So why would they shoot themselves in the foot? They were earlier doing it because they didn't want to displease America. Now they realize that, even friendship with America, when on some issues, America starts becoming prescriptive. including with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and he didn't like it. So they maintained, they didn't accept a Biden visit, and the visit was very, there was no optics, were very formal and distant. So Saudi Arabia wants to send a signal to US. It's a way of signaling. That's fine if you think that you are going to be so prescriptive. Here is China, which says we don't want to prescribe, we don't want to interfere in internal affairs. You mind your business, we mind our business. We don't have to talk about each other's interests. And China is an important source of, is an important market for Saudi Arabia, huge market for Saudi Arabia. It can be a huge source of investments into Saudi Arabia also. So it's both. They're spreading their risk, they're spreading their options, they're building their convergences with another major power, which who knows can become the #1 power. Who knows? I mean, we don't know about it. How future unfolds. We can try and see it goes in one direction, but it's not entirely in anybody's hands. So Americans are, they are sending a signal to the US. How does it impact us? Some impact, indeed, but I don't think huge impact, because eventually, we have, Saudi has huge stakes in India. I mean, it's the Indians who run Saudi Arabia in that sense, physically, through the effort. And they know we are not going to be prescriptive, we are not going to bother them, we are not going to cause internal problems for them. They know they trust us. Now they trust us. So that's how I would see it. Let me just check if there are any other questions on this subject. So this question, I'll read the questions on the screen now. So let me tell you one thing. Can you, the one who's posed this question, I suppose you have your facts right. Do you know of any country where the number of Indians has come down in the Gulf? Any country you know that? Ritu, any country you know that? No. So it's based only on reading newspapers. And I'll tell you why, because I have served in Kuwait. There would invariably every 3 months news will come, number of Indians is increasing. And perhaps today we are almost in Kuwait as many as Kuwaitis, almost, if not there. During my 2 years or so, number of Indians increased from about 625,000 to 800,000. And every second month there'll be news in government wants to do this, government wants to do that. Initially, I also get a little worried about it. Initially, when you're new, you want to, I would go and ask them. So they said, "Roka hai kisi ko." They say, "Akhbar chhod do, akhbar mein to politics hai." Theek hai na? Wo to ab hamare, there is a news that they want jobs, this, that, Indians are increasing. He said, "Have you stopped anybody? Have you seen the numbers coming down?" He said, "Numbers are increasing by 10, 20,000 every month. So why are you concerned? Have you stopped any Indian? Have you not given visa? Except those who don't deserve visa. That's a different issue that each country exercises. But have we stopped that? They're the only people who are increasing as Indians. So forget about news. Don't go about headlines that we'll set up a commission, we will do this. That's okay. We have to handle our members of parliament who ask these questions and who pose these concerns. We have to handle them. So go by facts. Has it happened in any Gulf country that you know of? In Qatar, we are more than Qataris. In Bahrain, we are more than Bahrainis. In UAE, we are more than UAE guys. And in Kuwait, we are now almost as many Kuwaitis. Saudi Arabia, because very large countries, obviously you can't have 3 crore Indians there. But so that's the fact. So don't go by some silly news coming here there. Just go by hard facts and just check the numbers. We are increasing every year. That's why I'm saying, see, newspaper में आ जाते हैं because वो वहाँ की headline पढ़ के खोल लेते हैं, यहाँ पे लगा लेते हैं. They don't do due diligence, कोई fact check नहीं करते हैं अखबार वाले. कोई न्यूज एजेंसी का फीड आता है, सबसे सस्ता काम है 10 एजेंसी का फीड ले लो और उसका एक अखबार बना दो छाप के, ठीक है ना, कुछ सनसनीखेज खबर पहले पेज पे लगा दो. So I won't give any credence to it. Okay. Any other question on this? Gulf, Africa, then we'll move forward. Next. European Union, again, you see, European Union is, as I see it now, they fundamentally don't rethink themselves. It's a decaying power. Militarily, to वैसे ही थोड़ा कमजोर हो गए थे when UK left, and economy-wise also. But after the Ukraine war and their complete inability to to have any impact on decision making shows how weak they have become, or how dependent they are on the US, or how bereft of any muscle or ability to fight they've been left with. So there's a sad part. But it will remain an important source of technology, trade, and investments for us. Actually, now even more, because as their companies are in difficulties and our enterprises are still sound, we are buying and we'll buy more companies and more technologies, and that's good for us. The only thing is that, our trade will take a little hit because their economy is right now in deep trouble. So they will not be able to consume as many goods as perhaps they could have. And we may not receive too many investments from them because they are so domestically consumed in trying to just somehow survive this winter, and perhaps let's see what happens next year. And some of the European countries are in serious economic difficulty. They were in difficulties post-COVID, perhaps they only got compounded. And when I'm saying this, I talk of Portugal, I talk of Greece, I talk of Italy, I talk of Spain. So there'll be challenges for us, but here is a huge opportunity for us to buy their companies, buy their technologies, to leapfrog this gap that we have in our manufacturing technologies and abilities in product design, etc., and supplemented by buying companies abroad in a big way. So I suppose we need to put our act together on that, do more on that, and government perhaps could do a little more on this in terms of making some of the resources available. But European Union is still a very large economic bloc, so it can't be just brushed aside. It's the best days perhaps are behind it if they fundamentally don't rethink their raison d'être, but they are still a very formidable, both in terms of numbers and in terms of the economic collective GDP. Ukraine conflict is a stress point on us. You saw in the first few months of Ukraine conflict, a large number of European heads of state, government, foreign ministers descending on us and giving us gyan. Now they realize that I think we don't need their gyan, we're not going to accept their gyan. So now they've backed off, they cooled down. Economically, they are in decline. Europe is in decline, except perhaps Germany and a couple of them turning right and protectionist. That's the nature of things. When things go bad, people want to throw out foreigners, the usual stuff, which is what is happening in some European countries. And they'll continue to look. They're believers in human rights. That's not an issue, but they want to also use it as a political stick, which is a bad thing. I mean, fair enough. You believe, you pursue it, but don't start imposing it on others. And they will use labor and environmental standards to basically take away some of your cost advantages, so their economies can revive, and their manufacturing and their service sector can revive. So all this will continue to happen. But again, as I said, this is a thing that we handled in the past. We know how to handle it. What we don't want is the European Union to sink, because it's general. It's a friend of ours, and we have lots to seek besides the market from them. There were some questions. I'll just take a couple of questions if they're related to this issue. What was it? Now, sir, what course of action we suggest to improve India-Pakistan relationship? Nothing. As I told you, just sit tight. Pakistan is in deep trouble now. Just make sure that it remains in trouble. We should not take it upon ourselves to improve India-Pakistan relationship. The relationships have been spoiled by them. If they have broken it, let them fix it. We just should not take it upon ourselves to make any further concessions or to even offer an olive branch. Let them first come with that. They need us right now to come out of the hole that they're digging themselves into, and we can deal with Pakistan, even a recalcitrant, even a Pakistan which misbehaves. We can deal with that. I think we have put them under pressure. Let's just keep this pressure, because we have this great ability of putting pressure and then releasing it ourselves. Why should we do it? And have they done anything to suggest that they want to improve relations with India? Ramadan, my question is to you. Since you asked this question, Have you seen anything on the side of Pakistan to improve relations with India?
There is nothing very significant.
No, even insignificant.
Sir, I cannot recall any good
So
steps.
so then why do you want to do this? Why do you want to offer? Because then they take it. You see, that's the problem. Then they feel that because they are needling us, because they are putting pressure on us through terrorism, etc., we have buckled down. You see, हम करते हैं इंसानियत के लिए, हम करते हैं भलमसद के लिए, ठीक है ना? And they read it completely differently as our neighbors. When we say चलो aid बढ़ा दो, they think हम because Chinese parents से डर गए इसलिए पैसा दे रहे, ठीक है ना? तो आपके तो पर्पस कुछ और देने का कि यार पड़ोसी है, तकलीफ में मदद कर दो इसकी, क्योंकि उसकी तकलीफें eventually will spill into yours, as the Bangladeshis came into your country. Okay, तो हम तो उसलिए करते हैं, and they read the signal very very differently. They think India डर गया, हम चीन के साथ जा रहे हैं तो इंडिया घबरा गया, थोड़ा और एक्सट्रैक्ट कर लेते हैं इंडिया से. So अभी उनको आप they are in trouble, which is of their own making. Let them stew in their juice. हमें क्या जल्दी है अभी?
So why there is such a behavior from Pakistan?
That you must ask
Because
them.
I
Why don't you ask
that,
them?
I read that 80% of people are very good. I just heard from some diplomats. But
देखिए,
still
ऐसा
they take
you can hear from any
harsh-
diplomats. It doesn't make a difference to us whether 80% people are good or bad. I don't want to sit in judgment. I don't 80% Pakistani, so I really can't say that. And I presume that what you're saying is right. I'm not in discounting. Do they have any say in the decision making? Can they influence the Pakistani army's approach towards us or the Pakistani government? Look at what the Pakistani foreign minister said in the UN about our prime minister. So we deal with the state, okay? We are not harsh on the people. भाई हमको पाकिस्तानियों को तो ऐसा नहीं है बीएसएफ कह रखा है कोई पाकिस्तान हिलता दिखे गोली मार देना वहां पे उनकी तरफ, हमने तो नहीं आदेश दिया ना ऐसे. But we can't take it upon ourselves to save Pakistan from itself. If their people are frustrated and fed up with their military, well, let them sort it out. We don't have to ease the pressure on the military or on the people to stand up to the military and tell them, bas karo.
That's true.
So, I'm not criticizing. Please understand. We're just exchanging views because, as I asked you the question, if you say something there, you'll be asked to explain it. कि आप ये कह रहे हैं कि पाकिस्तानी, we must solve this problem. So somebody like me was interviewing you. बोले हम क्यों solve करें? बताइए हमको. हमारा क्या इसमें advantage? And have you caused this problem in the first place? They have caused the problem. They have caused the problem. Let them come with the solution. ठीक है ना?
Yes,
I'm just trying to help you clarify your mind. Don't take it otherwise.
No.
अच्छा एक sir, Bangladesh often voiced concern regarding India's delay in signing waiver water sharing. You see, which is true. ये problem खाली तीस्ता को लेके है और किसी को भी लेके है नहीं. 4-5 हो गए हैं, including गंगा का sharing सब हो गया है. तीस्ता का problem चल रहा है. This is domestic politics in India between West Bengal government and government of India. तो वो अब उसका ये democracy है, उसका issues रहेगा. That's the nature of democracy. It will remain there. So we just have to. We'll move there slowly. It will take a little while. It will happen. And we have. I think we explained to Bangladesh. They understand it. We a domestic issue है. It's not that we don't want to have an agreement on sharing Tista waters. It's just the problem of domestic politics. And they understand it because transit through Bangladesh into our northeast has been a problem, even for Bangladeshi governments. It makes great sense because they'll make a lot of money with every ton of goods transiting through Bangladesh. But they have found it difficult to make it happen because of domestic politics. It will become a political issue. They understand it. Politicians understand it. कि politics कितना, how much will politics handle it? And eventually governments have to win elections also. Their government as much as our government. So they understand it. They will of course keep this issue alive and keep us under pressure. But that's the nature of things, because they want it to happen. And this will also help us in putting pressure or trying to sort out our inner issues, internal issues between West Bengal government and Indian government, etc. So वो है. but they understand. I don't think there's lack of understanding on this. कि ये issue थोड़ा वक्त लगेगा, not because we don't want it, but because there's domestic issues involved. ये UNSC का जब UN का कर लेंगे तब बात करेंगे, ठीक है ना? उसके बाद बात कर लेंगे. Any other question जो अब तक किया उसका question पूछ लीजिएगा, आगे का नहीं पूछिए, कि वो सब slide आ जाएगी तब करेंगे. हाँ?
Sir, I have one question. If asked who is responsible in Russia-Ukraine conflict, and if we say it is mostly because of NATO's expansion,
Yes.
and that make Russia insecure.
Yes.
Does that sound
you
okay?
see, yes, that is the reason. Because देखिए उनको तो कई बार पुतिन ने कहा है और मत करो, और मत करो. He's been saying that for a while. Don't do, there'll be consequences. ठीक है ना? And now they want to bring NATO right to the border of Russia, and Ukraine is a huge border with Russia. So they perhaps overplayed their hand. और वो खामखा यूक्रेन जो है वो पिस रहा है इसके अंदर. बाकी आप सब हम जैसे लोग पिस रहे हैं, फर्टिलाइजर के दाम बढ़ गए हैं, खाने के दाम बढ़ गए हैं, ठीक है ना?
So we can say there is no great fault of Russia, isn't it, sir?
No, see, you have to explain your answer. That it is not something which just happened like that. This is the progression which led to it. And Russia did not want NATO on its border. It's a matter of security for Russia also.
Yes, sir.
And the only seawater access that Russia has, what you call the warm water access, is in the Black Sea.
Yes.
ठीक है ना? तो अगर वो हिस्सा अगर आप नेटो पे कंट्रोल में आ जाएगा तो फिर एक्सेस कहाँ रहेगा उनका? Because नेटो का जो आर्टिकल 5 है उसमें अटैक ऑन वन इज अटैक अगेंस्ट ऑल. So that's a major problem, and Russia gets completely bottled in that sense. Because southern side में warm water को port ही नहीं बचेगा, warm water access नहीं बचेगा उनका. Besides having a huge border with NATO, which Ukraine joins.
Yes, sir.
उसका अच्छा आंसर ये होगा, कुछ इनकी थी, कुछ उनकी थी, कुछ दोनों की थी. ठीक है ना?
Yes, sir.
चलिए, ये UNSC का we'll discuss when I have finished on UN. Anything else? Any other questions so far? Just ask questions what you dealt with, not what you will deal later. That will be easier, na? Okay, so can you move further? If there are no questions so far. गुरसिमरत सिंह जी, हम बाद में कर लें UNSC का?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay, क्योंकि एक UN पे स्लाइड है प्रेजेंटेशन, उसके बाद कर लेते हैं. East Asia and the Pacific. Again, you see, you need to somehow we have lost. We have not focused so much on this because we have become very Eurocentric, European centric. Because you know, सबसे खूबसूरत देश वो डेवलप्ड थे तो सब छुट्टी वहां जाना चाहते हैं, सब करना चाहते हैं. But if you go east, you'll realize the tremendous footprint that India has had. And I must say, you see, that's something very unique about us, that we have influenced the world historically through the power of our ideas, not the might of our sword. And when PM talks of India becoming Vishwa Guru, he's not talking, you know, ऐसे बोल रहे हैं, कहने के लिए कह रहे हैं वो. Historically, that is how we influenced. अब अभी मैं वियतनाम से आ रहा हूँ, 10 दिन पहले वियतनाम में था मैं. वो अभी भी हिंदू टेम्पल्स वहां पे हैं. And the world's largest Hindu temple complex is in Cambodia, not in India. Indonesia, you go wherever you go, there's a huge footprint of your civilization. Because we fell to bad times last few hundred years, all that got substantially diluted. So when we talk of Vishwaguru and when we talk of promoting our thoughts, see, it is to revive those old traditions. Ab Thailand mein aaj bhi, the king is seen as a reincarnation of Ram. है ना? That shows कितना impact है आपके civilization का. Buddhism is the dominant religion in Japan, in parts of East Asia, and in China. It is an important religion in China. तो इतना आपका influence रहा है. You go the kind of temples you have in the whether it's Cambodia, whether it's Vietnam, the Cham civilization, Indonesia, Laos, it's huge footprint we have had. अब सिंगापुर क्या था? सिंहपुर था, ठीक है, सिंह का शेरपुर, वो नाम उनके आपसे निकले हुए हैं, बड़ा इम्पैक्ट था उसका. But we fell to bad times and it all, we just have to revive it. And hence East Asia becomes very important for us, not just because of our challenges of today and tomorrow with China, vis-a-vis China, but also because there's so much of civilizational link which can be revived, and the whole relationships can be turned around based on it. So there's a major effort going on in this direction. It will take time, and it will grow with both our focused approach on this and the growth of our economy and military might. दोनों ही साथ चलेंगे, क्योंकि देखो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग बात है, विश्व में खाली हमारी सिविलाइजेशन है जहाँ पे शास्त्र भी पूजे जाते हैं और शस्त्र भी पूजे जाते हैं. दुनिया में और कहीं नहीं होता है. कहीं देखा आपने शस्त्र को पूजते हुए? हमारे यहाँ पूजे जाते हैं. हम शास्त्र को भी पूछते हैं, विच इज नॉलेज, और हम शस्त्र भी पूछते हैं, विच इज आर्म्स. तो हम शक्ति को और ज्ञान को दोनों को पूछते हैं, और जब दोनों साथ चलते हैं तो देश बुलंद होता है. अब ये वक्त वापस आ गया है, हम शास्त्र भी पूजे और शस्त्र भी पूजे, और जब दोनों साथ चलते हैं तो फिर महाशक्ति बन जाते हैं. We have done it historically and we must do it again. And that's what I said, you guys perhaps 30 years, हम तो जिंदा बचेंगे नहीं, लेकिन आप लोग मुड़ के कहेंगे देखिए हमने कर दिया, 30 साल में कर दिया हमने तो. So with East Asia is very important, both for trade, for in that sense, for containing China, putting political pressure on China, putting military pressure on China. They are putting it in our neighborhood. We must do the same. We must return the compliment. We don't have the resources, but we must start building up slowly, and we are doing that. And we have given lines of credit to Vietnam to buy our military defense equipment, and we are giving to others. We are giving it to Philippines now. ब्रह्मोस बेच रहे हैं, किसी को दूसरी मिसाइल्स बेच रहे हैं, जहाज बेच रहे हैं, ships बेच रहे हैं. It's happening. It's already begun. It's just a matter of time. As our capacity is built, it will happen. But East Asia and Pacific will remain very important to us. And you have to understand that we have a throttle point. The Malacca Strait is a throttling point. China understands it, how vulnerable it is, and we understand it, how vulnerable we can make it. And if Malacca Strait is strangulated, and China understands it, that between India and US they can do it. I mean, China's foreign trade goes for a spin. For it to export anything to Gulf or to Africa would be very, very difficult, because then they have to go around Australia. Look at the humongous cost, additional costs. Viability khatam ho jati hai. And that is the reason why US, and this is my read of it, why US forced Australia to cancel its submarine deal with France and buy American nuclear submarines. Because एक बार Malacca Strait को strangulate कर दिया, which can be easily done, then China के लिए कोई बड़ा जहाज निकल नहीं सकता वहां से and can't come into Indian Ocean except south of Australia. And look at the distance, look at the cost, and look at the vulnerability. So East Asia becomes very important for us in every sense, and we are building our links with it. RCP में problem हुआ था, and we walked out of it because that would have basically opened our market to China further without any great resultant gains. So now we are reworking some of the treaties, and as we also try and reduce our costs and make our economy more cost efficient, we will find new ways of engaging in terms of trade, like our trade deal with Australia is an example of it. We'll go for bilateral trades or with the small regional trade groupings where we can find a balance and where we can insulate ourselves from Chinese exports coming through those, taking advantage of these deals. So that's East Asia for you. Next slide, please. Quad. Well, you know about it's been in the air. Facts I've already put here. You see, on the Quad right now, there are three. Earlier, Australia was a very reluctant member, and so was India. Now, Australia has literally opted itself into Quad. And because they've also become a part of the military alliance of AUKUS, this Australia, US, UK. So that's already happening. Quad is not yet a military grouping because we have some reluctances on this, and it will take time before. So it'll do all the right things. As I said, we need to have this confidence in them that they will not jettison us. They're not using us to put pressure on China, and once they sort out with China, we are left alone. We don't want to find ourselves in that situation. And secondly, see, we don't want to get caught into this struggle between 1 and 2, of trying to take a very clear side. Because we want this space for next 10, 15 years, 20 years to build our economic heft and build our defense capabilities without getting caught into with one or the other. So it's not going to be easy for us, but that's the direction that we're trying to take. And we have no interest in fighting a war with anyone. There are enough things to do back home to build economy and welfare of people and bring more prosperity. So if we can, that's what we would like to do. But Quad becomes a big pressure point on China. So it gives a card to us. And eventually, if things turn bad, we'll see where it goes. Next slide, please. United Nations. So no, we have been a very good member of UN. Simply put, we were back in the UN Security Council 21-22. It'll end in another 12 days from today, 13 days from today, as non-permanent member. But historically, we have carried a very important influence in the UN. And some of the debates of that time, some of the issues of that time, we've led it. And even today we are doing that. But at that point of time also, anti-colonialism, we had fought that war, the battle in UN, apartheid, concessional assistance to developing countries, special treatment of developing countries. We have led all those issues in the UN. Peacekeeping operations, we are the #1 contributor to peacekeeping operations in the UN. So we have supported both the UN's role as a collective decision-making mechanism of exchanging ideas, understanding each other, and taking collective decisions for the good of the world. We have done that. We have very good credentials. I've served in our mission to United Nations from 1999 to 2002. I was handling the political and disarmament issues, and we were heard. We were invariably heard. And it was like other missions will say, okay, let's listen to what India has to say. They may agree, they may not agree, but they were always heard. And they always found that India came with a freshness of thought. So that's where it is in the UN. We have supported, we have presented the most comprehensive plan for nuclear disarmament. We are in the forefront to make UN reflect contemporary realities. Now, you asked this question about our permanent membership. You see, permanent membership so I'll put it very bluntly. This is important. We can't say, government will not say it publicly and shouldn't. Undermines our thing. But fact of the matter is that the permanent 5 don't want any additions. Why would they want any more additions? Why would they dilute their power? They have no interest in doing that. But they can't say so publicly. So some will say we support India, some will say yes, we must have, but how many, with what powers, should they have veto, not have veto? We must expand Security Council. Let us think about how many new permanent, how many new non-permanent. So this debate has been going on. When I went to New York in 1999, this debate was going on. We are discussing the same issues, except that earlier it was a debate only in terms of debate. Now there is a text, which is a meaningless text because there are so many issues in bracket. bracket means which is not agreed. That is actually still the same debate. The question that you would ask is, do I see it happening soon? My answer is, I don't think so. Because China earlier did not want Japan. Now perhaps China would not want Japan and India both. It may not be, it can't be seen opposing both. So perhaps it will oppose Japan more today. I don't know, after 5 years, what will happen. They will oppose us more. I don't know about it. US says yes to us. UK and France support us full-heartedly because then it's not going to happen in any case. So they sound so good to us. UK and France are very supportive. अभी कुछ कहने में क्या बिगड़ता है? मालूम है होना तो है नहीं. So it's like giving you a check on a bank that doesn't exist. ये लो चेक लिखे दे दिया आपको जाकर भरवा लेना. बैंक का बैंक तो बने नहीं अभी तक. तुमको क्या बिगड़ता है कहने में? So a lot of countries support us. They genuinely support us. We enjoy very broad respect there and very broad support. That's the reality. But Mexico and Argentina will not want Brazil to come. So if there is expansion, Brazil will also come in. They will not allow. So they will not allow expansion to happen. Pakistan will not allow expansion to happen because India will come. They will not want that. Similarly, in Africa, there's no clear winner. Nigeria is the largest country in terms of population. Egypt thinks is the rightful representative, not just of Africa, but also of the Arab world. South Africa thinks technologically is the most advanced country in Africa, so it should be there. Other African countries, South Africa still has black country with white thinking. So, you know, बहुत complexities. I'm just giving you some of them. So consensus on expansion not going to be easy because, as I said, Pakistan will not want India. अगर जर्मनी आ जाए कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता उनको, जापान आ जाए फर्क नहीं पड़ता उनको, ब्राजील आ जाए फर्क, इंडिया को नहीं आना देना. Argentina will not allow or Mexico will not allow Brazil to come. हम आ जाए फर्क नहीं पड़ता. But then अगर 4 को आना है या 5 को आना है, which is currently Japan, Germany, Brazil and India, तो सबके opponents इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं, तो वो numbers काफी हो जाते हैं. और जो 5 हैं वो बोलते रहते हैं लेकिन उनको कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं है और लोग उनके साथ उन्हीं के बराबर बैठे हैं टेबल पे. They have no interest. They will not tell you publicly. Publicly बोलते हम चाहते हैं इंडिया या क्यों, कहने में क्या बिगड़ता है, होने तो देना नहीं आसानी से. So that's where it stands today. What happens later, I don't know. Either some of us reach a position where we can actually shake the UN. And we simply say अगर हम support नहीं करेंगे किसी UN program को, which is India, Japan, Germany, for example, and Brazil coming together, saying ठीक है आप लोगों को चलाना चला के देखिए, फिर हम अब UN से disengage रहेंगे, हम किसी भी चीज में support नहीं देंगे. And we are in a position to actually weaken UN so much that they have no option. अभी वो स्थिति आई नहीं है. Because you know, Germany beyond a point will not go against US and Japan will not go against US. That's a reality. तो अभी वो स्थिति आई नहीं है. I hope it happens. We have to continue to pursue our claim because अगर हम claim ही नहीं करेंगे तो मिलेगा कहाँ से? अगर हम ही नहीं कोशिश करेंगे तो आपको कौन देगा? कोई आके घर आके देगा नहीं आपको. So we have to continue this effort, but being very clear that it's not going to be easy, number one, and number two, hence we must not spend too much of political capital on it. ये सिक्योर करने के लिए हम किसी कंट्री का हाथ सिक्योर करने के लिए we make major concessions और वो हमें करने की जरूरत नहीं है. But we must continue to keep the focus of UN on this issue, and this is what we did when Foreign Minister, Excellent Foreign Minister Jaishankar, when he went to UN recently, Security Council का जो conclusion part था अभी हमारा presidency का, exactly ये कि multilateralism को revive करना है, तो इसकी credibility भी होनी चाहिए. और credibility का ये है कि जो participants हैं, major players हैं, उसमें अगर countries like India and बड़े countries reflected नहीं हैं, तो उसकी credibility affect होती है. So that's the pitch. We'll continue to make the pitch, but I've already explained to you my view on the matter. Any questions? या एक दो slide और है, खत्म कर लें, फिर question पूछ लेते हैं. Next slide, please. G20 presidency, because there's something very current, so you could expect questions on this. I'll just broadly summarize what G20 is. So it was established in 1999 as an intergovernmental forum comprising 19 countries and EU. So these are both developed countries and developing countries to discuss global economic issues. अब वो climate change mitigation, sustainable development वो सब उसी का हिस्सा बनते हैं, वो सब इस पे होते हैं. So it is not a political forum. And 2008 में when the 2008 economic crisis के बाद, it was elevated to summit level. And now 18 summits have taken place. It carries a lot of heft because it represents 80% of global GDP. Now this is a huge portion of world's economy and 75% of global trade and 2/3 of global population. So it carries a lot of heft because if there are collective decisions here, then they actually in a way reflect the majoritarian view of the world, not in terms of numbers of countries, but otherwise. Objective criteria like represents GDP, trade, population, humongous. So hence it's G20 can have a lot of salience and significance, and it has a lot of bearing on what happens. And hence our presidency becomes important. Now it becomes important for us to reset the global discourse and debate and create a new paradigm. And so we have given a very good slogan to it, or the theme to it: One Earth, One Family, One Future. And as the climate change shows us, or as the recent developments in Ukraine, Russia show us, things happening at one place have an impact everywhere. Or before that, what COVID showed us. What came out of China has gone all over the world. So there's one Earth. Political boundaries are one thing, but some of the things don't respect political boundaries. And our larger perspective of the world, Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, ke dunya ek parivar hai. साथ रहेंगे तो भविष्य उज्जवल है, भविष्य अच्छा होगा. लड़ेंगे तो तकलीफ होगी. So one Earth, one family, one future. So it is in a way to reboot or put a new software into the global thinking. Will you succeed? Well, maybe only partially, but shouldn't we try? If you believe in this, then you must try. And once we try, it will happen. There'll be others who will come in support. Maybe the progress will be slow. It will start, stop. But we have to reboot the whole global thinking. कि ये ism, वो ism, dominance, ये वो लड़ाई, ये कुछ नहीं होने वाला इसका. Eventually दुनिया एक है, साथ रहना है, और एक जगह जो होता है उसका impact दूसरे पे आता है. COVID showed it, Ukraine has showed it, and climate change is showing it to us every day. And those are larger issues, climate change, which are going to affect all of us, regardless of whether we are cause of it or not. So साथ काम करना जरूरी है. So let us find more convergences. Let us find more areas where we can work together and try and contain areas where there are discords and disputes, and try and freeze them or try and minimize them. So that would be our approach, and this I think is a very good approach. We will bring hopefully a lot of freshness of thinking on this issue. We're trying to bring new ideas also on a number of issues, and we have done that in the last few years. We've done a number of ideas. I mean, yoga, it was a great idea, and I'm saying so because I implemented the first International Day of Yoga as Director General ICCR, and we had yoga in 194 countries. It's catching on everywhere now. And it brings a new way of thinking, a new approach to health, a new approach to well-being, a new approach to relationships. So we're trying to do that. And we just have to continue to do it. It'll take maybe 20 years, 25 years, doesn't make a difference. We start the process, good things will happen. So we are bringing this freshness of thinking, a new way of looking at relations between countries or between peoples, and see how many threads we can build, tie each other, all of us with each other. As I said, the convergences, which will make sure that we don't fall apart too far. There will be problem आएंगे, थोड़ा बहुत आती हैं, जैसे परिवार में होता है, but by and large you contain it, you find solutions, some give, some take, and and then the family is kept together. So that's where our focus would be. So let us see, let's hope we can make a dent into this and then proceed on this basis. Next slide, please. Diaspora, I've already spoken about it, but it's very strong. It remits 75, perhaps now it's more. So we are the largest remittance receiver, inward remittances in the world, by far the largest. And I don't think we are going to lose this position anytime soon. We have substantial impact in political lives of Suriname, Mauritius, Fiji. Some of the place heads of state government come from India. Now, of course, UK also, Vice President of US, Prime Minister of Ireland, Prime Minister of Portugal, to name a few. And this is just the beginning. Singapore, hota hi hai. So it'll happen, you know, it's already happening. So diaspora is, and what has happened is fundamentally, India's relationship with diaspora has changed. Earlier it was diaspora would see that those left back home, living home are no do-gooders. They just keep making a mess of India. And the view in India, and I'm talking of 30, 40 years back, maybe 20 years back. And our view was, हमारे पैसों से पढ़े IIT गए ये किया वो किया और बाहर जाके ज्ञान देते हो. So it was like a a relationship which was not very warm and congenial. It's changed completely now. It's changed because India has changed. It has become much. Is now a country which is everybody talks with admiration. Not that we don't have enough things, good things to still do. And we also take pride in what the diaspora is doing. So now both are drawing strength from each other, as well as joy and respect from each other. So relationship has been fundamentally changed. And this gets reflected in the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, regional Pravasi Bharatiyas, now parliamentarians of Indian origin conference, so on and so forth. Lots of things are happening between diaspora and India. And both are supporting each other, both are adding heft to each other. A lot of companies feel that it's good to have top Indian CEOs, or at least in top positions, because they'll open Indian markets, they understand India better, which is a place of the future. So that's a great relationship. We all need to continue to keep working on this, and which I must say the government is doing. It's been doing for a while now. Next slide, please. So conclusion, India's prestige is rising, so is its reach. Relations with neighbors is a mixed bag. Pakistan is a standout. For the rest, by and large, is okay. Some could be a little better. Pakistan, China axis is working hard to stymie us in the neighborhood, as you've spoken about it also. Relations with the US and some of the major powers in East Asia, who feel threatened with China growing. Relations with Gulf countries witnessing significant development, and I think it will continue to do so. Relation with Russia would require delicate handling because of the complexities I've already discussed with you. And US-China relations will also have implications on us. So that's the conclusion. Now we can go through any questions that you may have on issues I've touched, or you think that issues were important I have not touched, because at the end of it, I have to keep it in about 2 hours presentation. So anybody who सुकृति जी आप अगर इसको कर लें तो नताशा जी आप शुरू कर लें, उसके बाद सुकृति जी will take over and moderate it. Yeah, Natasha ji, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So you just mentioned about ICCR, the Indian Council of Cultural Relations. So what is the reason that India is ranked so low in terms of soft power index vis-a-vis China and UAE? And what steps can be taken to increase India's soft power?
So, okay, let me tell you the impact of soft power. I don't know, wo index kis basis pe, I don't know about this index that you mentioned. So I really will not be able to comment, but I can tell you the real life impact. Okay. So I've only done one posting in the Gulf, which was my last posting in Kuwait. Kuwait is a Sunni Islamic country. Kuwait had stopped giving visas to Bangladeshis and Pakistanis. That's soft power for you. Indians and Pakistanis come from the same set, कोई पंजाबी यहाँ के वहां के एक से ब्लड है, वैसा ही है, नाम बदल गया, धर्म बदल गया, बाकी वही है. Indians are today welcome, not just accepted, welcomed anywhere in the world. And Pakistanis are not at all. Are all Indians good? Answer is no. Let's be honest about to each ourselves. Are all Pakistanis bad? Answer would be also no. And if you are honest to ourselves, this is soft power. The image of India and Indians is the ultimate soft power. And that leads to $75 billion of remittances, 8 million people employed in the Gulf. कुवैत में पाकिस्तानियों को वीजा नहीं देते, जो उनको मिल गए उन्हीं का रिन्यू होता था. बाकी कोई बहुत स्पेशल केस डॉक्टर हुआ या जो इंडिया से नहीं आने को तैयार थे, वहां पे खाली पाकिस्तान से आ रहे हैं तो कुछ कंसेशन करते थे, साल के 200-300. And when I was there, number of Indians was increasing by 500 every day. वो साल में 500 पाकिस्तानी को वीजा नहीं देते थे, बांग्लादेशियों को वीजा नहीं देते थे. And this not just Kuwait. एक जमाने में यूएई में इंडियंस और पाकिस्तानी बराबर थे. टुडे कोई मतलब आप यूएई में तो हिंदी बोल के काम चला सकते हैं, ठीक है ना, रुपया भी एक्सेप्ट कर लेते. ये सॉफ्ट पावर नहीं तो क्या है? The image of your country and the image of Indians is so good that कोई आपको मना नहीं करता आने से. Employment के लिए, इसके लिए, उसके लिए. This is soft power. Ultimately, this is soft power. Their view of India as a physical space may be different. ये गंदगी बहुत है, सफाई नहीं है, बिजली नहीं आती, वो सब है, वो अलग चीज हो गया. But Indians को लेने में किसी ने मना किया है क्या? कोटा होता है because वो उनके लॉ करते हैं, then they can't have, it can't be open season for them. But अगर US के H1B कोटा है तो किसको जाते हैं वो? Most of it comes to Indians. Now that is the ultimate soft power. When they're prepared to accept your people without any worries. Ultimate soft power वो है. बाकी तो we have to put our act together. आप कहते हैं tourism नहीं होता, तो गंदगी इतनी है, रोड्स कंजेस्टेड हैं, सड़क पे आपको चल के देखिए तो लोग सांस कलेजे में रहता है, ना मालूम कहाँ से निकल के टक्कर मार देगा. वो तो हमें अपना we have to clean up our act. Hotels are very expensive as compared. I've just come from Vietnam. 5-star hotel मैं काम से गया था in a small town, जो अलवर से छोटा टाउन है. I come from Rajasthan, so I can talk of अलवर. 2 लाख का शहर है. वहाँ पे 6-lane highway था. Beach was completely clean. People were super efficient. Tremendous work ethic, tremendous respect for traffic. हमारे कुछ भी नहीं, हकीकत है. Let's face that. That's a different image of India. But India की as a country, not the geographical space, but the country, and India's key image is very distinct from what they may perceive of coming and working in India or operating in India. And that's very high. And I've given the reasons why. Those are the main. आप किसको अपने घर में बुलाना पसंद करें, रखना पसंद करें? जब तक आपको एतबार नहीं उस इंसान पे और जहां से आता है वो नहीं करेंगे ना. वो खुलेआम कर रहे हो तो गल्फ में look at the number of Indians, 80 lakh. We have more Indians in Bahrain than Bahrainians. We have more Indians in Qatar than Qataris. We have literally almost as many Indians in Kuwait as Kuwaitis. We have far more Indians in UAE than in Emirates. खाली सऊदी अरेबिया बच गया, बस ओमान बच गया because they have much larger populations. So possible नहीं है 3.5 करोड़ इंडियंस का जाकर वहां जगह नहीं थी और ना उनको जरूरत है इतना लोगों पर खुद का इतना लेबर है उनके पास. कैसे एक्सप्लेन करेंगे इसको? यूएस में, यूके में कहाँ रोका इंडियंस को आने से? This is a very important way of seeing also. I'm not saying this is the only way of seeing it, but this is, as I said, ये टेस्ट है, टेस्ट का स्वाद है कि नहीं इंडियंस में. सब खाने को तैयार है इसको, इस डिश को सब खाने को तैयार. Yeah, Shubham, next question. Have I answered your question? Natasha, have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Shubham.
So you talked about diaspora and how it's an asset, but in recent time we have seen that Indian domestic politics has affected diaspora. For example, class in UK, Leicester, as well as domestic politics of other countries has affected the relationship between India and that particular country. For example, Canada and India and the Khalistan issue. So how do we deal with diaspora considering all these developments?
Look, so let us first deal with you mentioned about Canada. I've lived in Canada. You see, वहाँ पे जो लिबरल पार्टी है, उनको प्रो खालिस्तानी एलिमेंट्स का बहुत सपोर्ट है. तो उनको इलेक्शन जीतना हो, पैसे चाहिए इलेक्शन के लिए, तो इसलिए वो लोग जस्टिन ट्रूडो डज व्हाट ही डज. ठीक है? So that is the issue there. And that's a major problem in our bilateral relationship. Otherwise, it was very good, but that was the issue. And Justin Trudeau actually has made it more complicated. So जब तक conservative party थी, उन्होंने इसको control रखा था. They didn't allow this at all to happen. और ये problem है वहाँ पे. Indeed, this is a problem. It can happen, but diaspora also plays a major role in good relations between India and US, for example. Now, the Leicester बताया आपने, it was not between diaspora. It was between the Pakistanis in that area and the Indians. ठीक है ना? It was not two factions of diaspora fighting. That's a different issue altogether. That was India-Pakistan. But Canada would be an exception, and eventually they'll wake up to it. It just takes a little while. Electoral considerations होते हैं, इसलिए सब कर लेते हैं वो लोग. उनको election जीतना होता है, कर लेते हैं. But it's not sustainable. It won't last very long, and we just have to do a few things that we need to do, which I did when I was there, and हमारे तब कोई problem नहीं थी. I mean, not the kind of problem you see there. It was contained. It was actually compressed. So you have to talk to them also. Some of them carried the angst of 83, and there was angst. But you deal with it. You talk it out, and which I did, and they understood it.
So, but in the case of Leicester, Indian MEA issued a statement supporting Indian stance there, Indian supporter stance there. So, sir, are we?
What is the Indian stance? यार अगर वहाँ Indians को मार रहे हैं तो क्या करेंगे आप? Support करेंगे जो मार रहे हैं उनको? What else do you expect MEA to do? And MEA was right, because some of them are Indian nationals. And if tomorrow something happens to American nationals, doesn't the American embassy or British embassy or other embassies come to us and they protest, or they say कि आप समाधान ढूंढिए, मदद कीजिए? वो कहते नहीं कहते? ठीक है ना? तो हम भी तो वही कर रहे हैं. We're not interfering. We're just telling there's a problem. Please look into it and solve it. आपके मुल्क में रहते हैं, ठीक है ना? तो समाधान आप ढूंढिए उसका. और अगर एंटी सोशल एलिमेंट्स उनको परेशान कर रहे हैं, मार रहे हैं, उनकी प्रॉपर्टी तोड़ रहे हैं, then we expect the local government to take action. भाई अगर वो आपको ह्यूमन राइट्स पे ज्ञान देते हैं पूरे टाइम कि इंडिया में ऐसा होना चाहिए, इलेक्शन वैसा नहीं होना चाहिए, आर्टिकल 370 होना चाहिए, नहीं होना चाहिए, सीए होना चाहिए, नहीं होना, जिसमें उनको कोई लेना देना नहीं है. We are only interfering in the case where people of either Indians or people of Indian origin are affected. If they think they have a local stand-eye on what happens in India's politics or what happens in India's Article 370, on which they have nothing to do whatsoever. ठीक है ना? वो अमेरिकन तो इन्वॉल्व नहीं है ना वोटिंग के लिए जम्मू एंड कश्मीर, उसका वोट तो नहीं गया ना उसकी जमीन गई है वहां पे, फिर वो क्यों दखल करेंगे वहां? फिर भी करते हैं ना वो लोग. So then you have every right to protest and to interfere, not interfere, but to convey your views. If people of Indian origin or people who have Indian passports are affected, वो भी तो करते हैं सब. So it's not interference.
Thank you, sir.
देखिए नहीं, इसका वजह है, अगर वहां पे इंडियंस को परेशान करेंगे तो eventually have to take a position and it will spoil the relations. अगर आज तो उसको काबू में कर लेंगे तो रिलेशन खराब नहीं होंगे. समझिए अगर मान लो 150 इंडियंस को मार दिया, इंडियन पासपोर्ट होल्डर्स को क्या करेंगे आप? आपको एक्शन लेना पड़ेगा ना. एंड दैट एक्शन कुड मीन आप उनकी कंपनी को कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं देंगे, उनके इंपोर्ट कुछ तो आप अपने डिस्प्ले दिखाएंगे ना, और दिखाना भी चाहिए आपको, तो उसको एस्केलेट क्यों होने दें? Which means you must convey that please be careful in what you're doing and what you're not doing. ठीक है? या रामदान आप बताइए।
Sir, I guess Ramdan ki connectivity nahi hai. Shall I read the questions from the chat which you have not taken already?
Yes, please. Or should I bring it on the screen?
If you can, sir, you can take by your choice.
या नहीं तो स्क्रीन पे आ जाएगा क्वेश्चन। ये है क्वेश्चन सर, व्हाट्स परमानेंट सीट का हो गया। In the wake of UNSC failure in Russia, Ukraine, can G20 bring some stability back? देखिए G20 का ऐसा है, दो तीन चीजें हैं। This question is a very valid question. G20 is not a political forum. So ये and Russia Ukraine issue is entirely political. G20 का वो थोड़ा सा इशू है उसमें दखल करना, बिकॉज अगर ये हर मुद्दों पे पॉलिटिकल में आने पड़ गए तो G20 बिखर जाएगा। It was created to deal with economic issues, larger economic issues, where, as I said, 80% of world's GDP, 75% of trade, and 2/3 population could then take some decisions to make sure that international economy remains stable and remain growth focused वो रहे। तो वो उसका काम वहीं पे छोड़ दे, ठीक है। इनफॉर्मली बात करके वो समाधान ढूंढ सकते हैं, देयर इज नो हार्म, बट फॉर्मली उसको टू ब्रिंग इट इनटू G20 मे नॉट वर्क, क्योंकि वहां रशिया अकेला पड़ जाएगा। G20 में अकेला पड़ जाएगा, मे बी चाइना होगी, थोड़ा बहुत इंडिया होगा, थोड़ा बहुत इंडोनेशिया, सम ऑफ देम विल डू, बट बिकॉज इट्स प्रीडोमिनेंटली वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज, EU प्लस जापान, कोरिया, सब बेसिकली, एंड जर्मनी, UK, फ्रांस, इटली, सब वहां पे हैं, तो थोड़ा सा शायद वहां प्रॉब्लम हो जाए। तो बेटर ये है कि उसको जो उसका काम है वो ही करने दीजिए, वो ठीक से करें, तो कम से कम एटलीस्ट एक फ्रंट तो अच्छा पैक्ड रहेगा, काम ठीक चलता रहे। दिस वुड बी माय व्यू ऑन दिस। इज डेमोक्रेसी डिप्लीटिंग इन रियल इंडिया एज पर डेमोक्रेसी रिपोर्ट? क्यों, देखिए ये पहली बात तो ये this is not a foreign policy question. I mean, I can answer it. I have no problems in answering it, but let's keep it for the end. Let's first deal with my core competence. Sir, can Indian presidency G20 be a gradual step towards replacement of UNSC by G20? देखिए मैंने, as I told you, UNSC is a treaty-based organization. It has come out of a treaty, so it has a legal backing to it. UN Charter was approved, adopted by countries, and those who joined UN accepted it. Now G20 is an informal forum. So informal forum में वो work काम informally हो पाएगा। उसका formal structure देंगे तो representative नहीं है। It only is 20 countries plus EU, 19 countries plus EU. एक दो observers हैं, स्पेन है, अभी आजकल अफ्रीकन यूनियन को बुला लेते हैं, but it's not representative. The remaining 180 countries of the world have no say in it. Not 180 countries because EU है तो कुछ countries और कम कर लीजिए। Say 160 countries of the world have no say in the deliberations of G20. It's not representative. And if it's not representative in terms of numbers, you see legitimacy question में आएगी। And can you impose it another question? बोले हमसे तो ना आपने हमको सुना, ना हम आप कुछ कह पाए, ना हमारा say वहाँ पे, और निर्णय वहाँ पे लेते हैं आप और हमको बोलते हैं implement करो, तो वो पॉसिबल नहीं होगा। दिस इज माय सेंस। सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल रहेगा। देयर कुड बी इनफॉर्मल अरेंजमेंट्स where some of the issues could be resolved in G20 or just G10. Eventually there could be G10, जो 4-5 members बाहर रह गए जिनको UN Security Council में, there's a feeling that they should be in the Security Council plus those members. They may sit in New York and informally say, भाई चलो आप बता दो क्या चाहते हो, and let us see how we can take it forward. उतना शायद हो जाए, थोड़ा बहुत होता है, उतना शायद हो जाए, beyond that नहीं होगा। उसकी अपने इश्यूज हैं, और फिर क्या होगा, ये भी पॉलिटिकल इशू बन गया तो बड़े इकोनॉमिक निर्णय भी होने बंद हो जाएंगे। पॉलिटिकल में ज्यादा पॉलिटिकल इश्यूज ले आए तो दैट विल बी रिस्क देयर। should India raise Tibet or Taiwan issue to counter Chinese dominance? So देखिए, Tibet and Taiwan issues are two different issues. We have accepted a one China policy. We have one China policy. ठीक है ना? So Tibet issue, Taiwan issue, we are doing it differently, which is strengthening our relationship with Taiwan, both in terms of substance and in terms of optics. वो हम कर रहे हैं, already कर रहे हैं. Now regarding Tibet, we have already accepted Tibet as autonomous region of China. ठीक है ना? तो issue ये है कि अभी आप वहां पे क्या रेस करेंगे सिवाय we can raise the issue of human rights there. That's what we can raise. But as I said, we must open our fronts carefully. ये निर्णय झुंझलाहट में, गुस्से में, frustration से नहीं हो सकते हैं. You have to see what are the next steps. You have your own vulnerabilities. नॉर्थ ईस्ट में मुद्दे खुल जाएंगे, ये खुल जाएगा, तो क्यों हासिल क्या करेंगे आप? और जब कंट्रीज निर्णय लेती हैं तो इट कांट बी टेकन आउट ऑफ एंग्स्ट, झुंझलाहट में, गुस्से में, फ्रस्ट्रेशन से वो निर्णय लेना उचित नहीं रहता है. आप कैलिब्रेटेड निर्णय लीजिए, dovetail it and link it to your capabilities, and then as you go along, you keep building on it. वो हम कर रहे हैं. पहले ताइवान से बिल्कुल नहीं थे रिलेशंस, फिर हमने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफिस खोल लिया, ट्रेड ऑफिस खोल लिया, डिप्लोमेट्स पोस्टेड थे, उनके हो गए, अब वो थोड़ा और अपग्रेड कर दिया उसको. तो ये that is how you do it, and that's what we are doing. Okay, now how significant is, this is Aman Gupta's question, how significant is Myanmar in India's scheme of things, and how does it change with the incoming of junta rule? See, this is truly a challenge for us. Our relationship with Myanmar is very important, both because we have a long border with it. The border is in the very sensitive northeast area of India, which is linked only through Siliguri corridor. So अगर नॉर्थ ईस्ट को हमको एक ऑल्टरनेटिव रूट चाहिए तो दो ही रास्ते हैं नॉर्थ ईस्ट में, ऑल्टरनेटिव रूट्स अवेलेबल टू अस besides the Siliguri corridor. It's a very long circuitous route. One is through Bangladesh and second is through the sea route through Myanmar, and then you go into your northeast areas. वो हम सड़क भी बना रहे हैं, पोर्ट भी हम डेवलप कर चुके हैं, working on that. So it has a huge salience for us, our relationship with Myanmar. Now the challenge is how much you work with the military there. वो challenge है किस तरह से करें, उसको किस तरह से handle करें. So in the past जब ये coup हुआ था 90s में, जब हुआ था तब पहले हम रूठे हुए थे, फिर धीमे धीमे we realized it, and I used to be then a young under secretary dealing with Myanmar also. तो मेरा ये था कि देखो वहाँ की सरकार वहाँ तय करेंगे, जो भी सही है गलत है, हमें अपना इंटरेस्ट का भी ख्याल रखना जरूरी है. So we started slowly opening up to the military. I think the same will happen now. It will happen slowly. It's important. अब उस वक्त China was not a major factor. Today China is a major factor, and China is looking at access into Indian Ocean through Myanmar, including pipelines which they've laid. तो अगर वो हो जाता है तो फिर आपका जो मलक्का स्टेट पे कंट्रोल है वो उतना थोड़ा कमजोर हो जाता है. थोड़ा मलक्का स्टेट की सिग्निफिकेंस फिर भी रहेगी, क्योंकि पाइपलाइन है, पाइपलाइन में कंटेनर तो नहीं जा सकते, ठीक है ना, तेल तो जा सकता है, कंटेनर तो नहीं जा सकता है, उसके तो सड़कें और रेलवे लाइन चाहिए, वो है उसकी अपनी implications. But so we have to handle it. हमारा थोड़ा सा, because we are democracy and we think that democracy is a good rule there and it's a better way of, so वो challenge भी रहता है. So we are handling it gingerly. I mean, I just say we handle it gingerly. If you see, both our foreign secretary went and our army chief went to Myanmar after this government had taken over, the military regime had taken over. So, but our thing is that, you see, we have to take care of if there are insecurities of the military there, we have to take care of that. We have to find a way where we are not seen taking very clear sides of one side, and yet you want to support democracy. तो थोड़ा सा walk जो हमारा है, थोड़ा सा it's a little tight rope walk, and there are no easy solutions to us there. But we don't see any deep misgivings against us in the Myanmarese military also. They also understand what we are doing. The Rohingya issue, we supported them, so they understand that. Yes, इसमें तो question हो गए. मैं यहाँ के question खत्म कर लूँ, उसके बाद I'll come on those who raise their hands. Reason behind delay in India EU FTA. इसे देखिए FTA का क्या है? Earlier थोड़ा सा I think हमारी कुछ thinking में भी evolve हुई है. Earlier we entered into some of the agreements either based on hope or based on showing that we are trying to please others. कर लेते हैं, देखेंगे. And this is what happened with our free trade agreement with ASEAN. And it became open season for exporting televisions to India and all that. Some of the industries got adversely affected. And we got nothing much in return. So we have now rethinking our FTAs. And we want to make it, we want to take it to a point where our key concerns are all addressed and we are net benefit from it. Now, फायदा क्या है उसका? आज ऑस्ट्रेलिया से क्यों अटका पड़ा था? We don't want to finish our dairy industry, on which at least 50 million Indians depend. At least 5 crore इंसान depend करते हैं उस पे. I don't know if any of you know, but do you know the turnover of Amul? Any of you know the turnover of Amul? Raise your hand. मालूम पड़े आप लोग कितना अखबार पढ़ते हैं और कितना देखते हैं? इतने लोग सिविल सर्विस में आने को तैयार हैं, बताइए. एक तो बताइए, हाथ ऊपर कीजिए, who knows the turnover? Don't Google it. So you don't know about it. Amul's turnover, Amul and your franchises, is 55,000 crores. It is one of the largest companies in India. 55,000 crore ka turnover hai. And Amul gives, bulk of the money goes back to the farmers. They have a ratio, very high ratio of money which is given to the farmers for purchase of mainly milk, but otherwise edible oil, all we lete hain. Now, the huge number of Indian farmers depend upon it, on agriculture, on dairy. Just to please Australia, you can't do it. See, their dairy system is very different. The mechanized is a completely different. You can't do that. Regardless of free trade or no free trade, it's not going to fly. You will have people on the roads. And Amul has a great history. I don't know if you know who set it up. It was set up by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel before independence. And he asked Moraji Desai to go and implement it. So they busy the freedom movement. It's a long history, it is a scope. And it has produced phenomenal wealth all across, and it's continued to do so. So dairy industry नहीं खोल सकते आसानी से. If you like it, don't like it, doesn't make a difference. I mean, there's a question of livelihood of 50 crore people, 5 crore people. So ये issues थे. So we're addressing those slowly. We are working on it. But now we are getting into free trade agreements with eyes open, with very, very meticulous planning, great consultations internally. And when I say consultations, means consultations with the industry. Dekhiye, nobody is going to give you a free trade where only you can export and you can benefit, other guys not going to benefit. But the balance has to be fair and reasonable. It has to lead to industrial development of India or agricultural development of India, not to retard your dairy industry. You can't do that. 5 crore लोगों को रोजी रोटी थोड़ी पलात मार सकते हैं, या तकलीफ दे सकते हैं उनको, just because you want to have a free trade agreement. So अब जो free trade agreement आ रहे हैं वो ऐसे आ रहे हैं, तो EU के साथ negotiate हो रहा है, but number of issues to be resolved, and we will see how it goes. And you have to enter into agreements only if it's on balance. You see yourself as beneficiary, either immediately or in the midterm. कि चलो हमारी industry develop हो जाएगी, some of the industries will shift here, etc., etc. ठीक है, थोड़ा बहुत हिट कुछ इंडस्ट्रीज को लगे, we'll deal with it. But wholesale थोड़ी अपनी इंडस्ट्री बंद करा के या अपनी एग्रीकल्चर बंद करा के आप फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट करेंगे because you want a free trade agreement. It looks very nice signing a free trade agreement. I think we've gotten away from that now. And that's why, if you remember, RCEP में after all the negotiations, we came out and we said नहीं करेंगे, ये possible नहीं हमारे लिए accept करना. Till हमारी conditionality accept नहीं होंगी, नहीं करेंगे. They've not prepared to accept the conditionality and we refuse to sign the agreement. We have now matured. We have become more hard-headed in our negotiations, which is important. ओके हो गया सर। शुड सार्क भी डिस्बैंडेड? भाई इसको डिस्बैंड करने की जरूरत है, वैसे ही मूड़ी बंडे वो तो ठीक है ना। जो ऑक्सीजन पे आप ऑक्सीजन क्यों बंद करना चाहते हैं? आप क्यों बंद करना चाहते हैं? Why should you be seen as finishing SARC? Because you see, SARC is a good thing for us to tell others कि पाकिस्तान कुछ नहीं कर रहा है, ना फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहा है, ना ये कर रहा है, ना वो कर रहा है, तो ठीक है ना, आपको क्या दिक्कत है? कुछ नहीं हो रहा तो ना हो जाने दीजिए. And because nothing was happening, we found other solutions, which was BIMSTEC was one solution, and we are looking at others where we continue to do that. ठीक है? Okay. Sir, we have been advised to take a neutral stance in IR. What is IR? Acha, international relations. For example, use of diplomacy dialogue rather than using hard power in cases like Tawang. Who has said that you must use diplomacy and dialogue in Tawang? ये किसने कहा आपको? Huh? I don't know who has advised you, but anyway, look, I don't want to get into this debate. आप क्या जवाब दे? ये मेरा काम नहीं है. ठीक है ना? I'm just explaining to you things. Eventually, it is your wisdom, your beliefs, which you must convey there, because that is the only thing that you'll be able to sustain. And those should be based on both facts and a good understanding and assessment. So my effort is to help build this understanding and effort. Not to give you, as they say, meal ready to serve. कि ये सवाल का मैं क्या जवाब दूं? जवाब तो आपके अंदर से आना चाहिए, जवाब वो आना चाहिए जिसमें आप विश्वास रखते हैं. क्योंकि वो तो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, यकीन से बता रहा हूँ, वो आपको 5 मिनट में मालूम पड़ जाएगा आपको कि आप कुंजी पढ़ के और जवाब दे रहे हैं, या किसी का जवाब आप रट के आए हैं वो दे रहे हैं. वो 2 मिनट में ढूंढ लेंगे. वो अगला सवाल 3 सवाल बाद चौथा सवाल पूछा है तब मालूम पड़ जाएगा कि एक्चुअली क्या कह रहे हैं, और जो कह रहे हैं उनकी कथनी में और करनी में कितना अंतर. क्योंकि आपकी इंटरनल कंसिस्टेंसी अगर नहीं है तो वो सामने आई जाती है, छुपी नहीं रहती. So be very careful about it. That is why I said I'm explaining to you. I've given you rationale for everything. I've given you my rationale. I'm telling you exactly what I believe in, and my answers are what I believed in. They were unconventional at times. It was not they were not at times the same thoughts as they were thinking, but that didn't make a difference to me. I was able to justify. I was able to explain my answers with facts and sensible arguments. That's what you must do. They don't expect a 23-year-old kid or 24-year-old kid to solve all the world's problems, which collectively उनका 250 साल का experience आपके इंटरव्यू लेने वालों का 7 लोगों का 30-35 साल काम किया, हर एक ने 35 साल, वो समाधान नहीं कर पाए जब नौकरी में थे. So they don't expect you to come and solve in the 40-minute interview and have answers to all the world's problems. I don't think so. That's the expectation. They want to know your sense of reasoning, your ability to marshal facts, your ability to make a right assessment based on those facts, and your ability to explain why you are saying what you are saying. That's it. They don't expect you to have solutions to all the world problems. जो वो तो नहीं कर पाए नौकरी में रह के अब आपसे उम्मीद करते हैं कि कमरे में घुसते आपसे समाधान निकाल के दे देंगे, ऐसी उम्मीद भी नहीं है. So be consistent in what you are saying. Explain your reasons, give your reasons, and there should be sound reasons, sensible reasons. Based on this is what I'm trying to explain to you all through. So yeah, I don't know. For example, use of diplomacy dialogue rather than using hard power in Tawang is whoever has given. Raman, is your call. You want to give this answer? Ke we should use diplomacy and dialogue in Tawang. Good luck to you. But I really don't think I will ever give that answer. So. This is done now. Yes, Raman first and then Ramdan. Yeah, Raman.
Hello, sir.
No,
sir,
I want to see on the screen, please. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Just.
You're not talking to wall, है ना?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Hello, sir.
Yep.
Sir, my another question is related to a thing. For example, our Prime Minister, whenever he goes to international summits, he always says that कि हम एस्पायर करते हैं विश्व गुरु बनना. जो ये विश्व गुरु बनने की कल्पना है, जो एक ऑब्जेक्टिव है कि हमें इसे फुलफिल करना है, सर इसको मतलब मल्टीपल फैक्टर्स हैं इसके, जिसको कल्चरली, पॉलिटिकली, फॉरेन अफेयर्स वगैरह में सर लेना है. लेकिन सर मेरा यहाँ पे पर्टिकुलरली कल्चरली है. जैसे हमने योगा को लिया और योगा को पूरे विश्व में प्रचार करा, और उसको और सर क्या तरीके हैं कि ये जो विश्व गुरु की जो हमारा एक मोटिव है इसको पूरा किया जाए. और एक विश्व गुरु के रूप में उभरा जाए?
बिल्कुल सही, अच्छा सवाल है आपका। देखिए ऐसा है, व्हाट डज इट मीन? इट मींस दैट वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू गिव ज्ञान टू एवरीबॉडी, है ना। कोई गुरु का काम खाली ज्ञान देना नहीं होता है ना, दिशा दिखाना होता है, चलना आपका काम है ना।
जी सर।
So yoga में, through yoga what we did, and please see the history of it, and let me mention this to you. When we started doing this, and since I implemented the first International Day of Yoga as DGICCR, I was deeply involved with the process. और हमने implement किया था उसको। उस वक्त ये, this is the reality which will actually surprise all of you. At that point of time, Shri had centers in more countries in the world than Government of India had embassies.
जी सर।
That's the power of your ideas. उनके पास कोई तो ना डिप्लोमेटिक पासपोर्ट था, ना स्टेट का सपोर्ट था, स्टेट की फंडिंग थी। श्री had centers in more countries, and हर न्यूयॉर्क में 10 सेंटर थे उनके, मतलब अमेरिका में तो सैकड़ों सेंटर होंगे, वो छोड़ दिए, मैं तो नंबर्स कोई, बट presence in countries, physical presence in countries, he had more centers in countries than Government of India had embassies. Today it has changed, और वे भी ना बराबर है उनके, ठीक है ना, या शायद थोड़ा आगे पीछे होगा, बट उन्होंने और जोड़ लिए होंगे, मेरी इन दिनों मुलाकात नहीं उनसे, but that's the reality of it. Now that is the power of your idea. उनके अनुयायी कौन थे? अधिकतर गोरे लोग थे।
जी सर।
ठीक है ना, ये आप जो ये अपने हैं, अपना सदगुरु हैं
जी।
That is the power of your idea. That's the power that the thought. That is what you have to promote. दूसरी बात ये बताएं आपको, पीएम विदेशियों को नहीं बोलते हैं, वो हिंदुस्तानियों को बोलते हैं बाहर जाके।
जी सर।
He doesn't go and tell the American president हमें विश्व गुरु बनना है. It will be first of all very impolite. Imagine somebody came to you and say मैं आपको गुरु बनना चाहता हूँ. Would you like it? यार आप रहने दो ना, अपना देश तो पहले ठीक कर लो.
जी सर।
ज्ञान बात देना है ना, तो वो नहीं कहते हैं किसी और, वो हम लोगों को, he's telling all of us in India and Indians abroad, ठीक है, that your ideas have enormous power. अनेकांतवाद, look at the powerful thought.
जी सर।
Yoga, holistic healing, look at the power of that idea. ठीक है ना, अहिंसा, ठीक है. I mean, since I'm a Jain, not only ahimsa, but more importantly, aparigraha, non-attachment. What a powerful idea.
जी सर।
आपकी जिंदगी आधी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाए, आपको अटैचमेंट नहीं है तो,
जी सर।
सामान से लगाव नहीं, कुछ नहीं, तो कितना जिंदगी. Now those are the power of ideas that you will bring forth to the world. You're not saying you become this religion, that हमें धर्म से वो लेना देना नहीं. सनातन धर्म में धर्म का मुद्दा ही नहीं है ना. It's a way of thought. And अनेकांतवाद is deeply rooted into it, है ना?
बिल्कुल सर।
But he has never told the foreign leaders कि हम तुम्हारा गुरु बनेंगे. He's telling, he's exhorting all of us. And गुरु बनने के लिए पहले ज्ञान तो होना चाहिए ना?
जी सर।
ये exhorting us के पहले अपने आप को इतना काबिल कर लो कि बुद्धा की तरह या औरों की तरह तुम जाके दुनिया भर में अपने थॉट से इन्फ्लुएंस कर सको. Because there is so much beauty in our thought.
जी सर।
हिंसा का तो मुद्दा वहाँ है ही नहीं, ठीक है ना? Because we just thought it was too lowly thing to worry about using weaponry or might, ठीक है ना? क्योंकि you see, eventually if you see where did we end up and why we lost also on the battlefield, because our struggle was with ourselves. सारा हमारा फोकस, once we sorted out the worldly issues, है ना, जो 4 हमारे जिंदगी के phases थे, वो सब तुमने sort out कर लिए. Then it became a struggle within. मैं अपने आप को कैसे समझूं और अपने आप के साथ क्या करूं?
जी सर।
Whole struggle was within ourselves, not vis-a-vis others. वो तो हमने सब sort out कर लिए थे. Rules of the game, एक दूसरे के संबंध कैसे होंगे, वो सब हमने sort out बहुत जल्दी कर लिए थे. When the world had not even figured that out.
जी सर, अर्थशास्त्र सर.
तो हमारा सोच तो अपने आप, मैं अपने साथ क्या करूं मैं?
जी सर.
How do I deal with myself and how do I elevate myself? तो आप देखिए जो हमारे चाहे मोक्ष का कंसेप्ट है, वो सब तो खुद का था ना.
जी सर.
नहीं था किसी का, है ना, कि इस जीवन के बंधन से तोड़ के पुनर्जन्म को तोड़ना, तो सब अपना था ना खुद का. You are not doing for that. You couldn't do it for your family. You can never do it. But never thought that you can do it for your family. क्या आपको परिवार सबको मोक्ष मिल जाएगा? नहीं मिल सकता है. मौत मिल सकती है, मोक्ष नहीं मिल सकता. मोक्ष तो खुद ही करना पड़ता है. So we are already very elevated. So the power of this is a thought that would spread to the world because it will solve a lot of world's problems, including environmental problem.
बिल्कुल.
So अगर आप now this is what he's trying to explain to us, tell us. But उन्होंने दुनिया में किसी लीडर को जाकर नहीं कहा है कि हम आपके गुरु बनना चाहते हैं. He only talking to his own people, which is people of Indian origin and mainly to India.
बिल्कुल.
Yeah, Ramadan. I hope I answered your question. Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. बिल्कुल. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Ramadan.
सर मेरा सवाल टूरिज्म को लेके है कि अभी फ्रांस इतना छोटा देश है, उसमें लगभग फॉरेन ट्रेवल सबसे ज्यादा आते हैं. कंबोडिया का एक मंदिर है जो मतलब पूरे राजस्थान से भी ज्यादा टूरिस्ट वहां आते हैं. और एक दुबई के मेयर ने भी बोला था कि हमारे पास इजिप्ट से पिरामिड नहीं है, इंडिया जैसा ताजमहल भी नहीं है, बट इन दोनों से ज्यादा टूरिज्म दुबई में आते हैं.
बिल्कुल सही है.
सर बोटलनेक इंडियन टूरिज्म में कहाँ है? डोमेस्टिक लेवल पे है या बाहर पब्लिसिटी मार्केटिंग का इश्यू है?
देखिए सवाल मार्केटिंग का, खाली मार्केटिंग का नहीं है, सवाल कनेक्टिविटी का है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का है और सवाल सफाई का है. व्हाट मैं आपसे अभी वियतनाम की बात कर रहा था, ठीक है ना. मैं वियतनाम से अभी आया, 10 दिन पहले मैं वियतनाम था और हमारा जो मैं फिलैंथ्रोपी है मेरी, मैं जिसमें बहुत डीपली इन्वॉल्व हूँ, तो हम वहाँ पे फ्री पाँव लगाने गए थे, जयपुर फुट लगाने गए थे वहाँ पे. तो आज तक हमने करीब 350 लगा दिए पाँव वहाँ पे. फिजी में हमने कल ही बंद किया है, हमने 650 फ्री पाँव लगाए वहाँ पे, ठीक है ना. तो मैं वहीं पे अपना अधिकतर टाइम देता हूँ. ये तो संतोष जी का आदेश होता है इसलिए मैं आ जाता हूँ, इसलिए वापस थोड़ा पढ़ना भी पड़ जाता है. बट इसी आप यू गो टू वियतनाम. मैं आपको बताऊं, जो छोटा शहर था हैनोई से कोई नहीं, होचिमिन, हैनोई से तो करीब 1500 किलोमीटर नीचे था और होचिमिन से करीब 400 किलोमीटर नॉर्थ था. इट्स कॉल्ड टुई हुआ. अलवर जितना बड़ा है वो 2 लाख से आबादी नहीं. अलवर की आबादी ज्यादा है. अलवर राजस्थान का छोटा शहर है, ठीक है ना, उसकी आबादी ज्यादा है. 6 लेन का हाईवे, कहीं कचरा नहीं, कंप्लीटली क्लीन बीचेस, 5 स्टार होटल और इक्वल टू 5 स्टार नहीं समझ लीजिए, बट मतलब उसी समझ लीजिए, उसी कैटेगरी 4 समझ लीजिए आप उसको. यहाँ 17वीं मंजिल पे स्विमिंग पूल था एंड रूम रेंट वाज $60. Now that is the effort they have made on infrastructure building. और जब प्रधानमंत्री बोल रहे थे सफाई की बात, इसी टूरिज्म के लिए सबसे पहली चीज है सफाई. If foreign tourist comes, he gets put off, including my city, and Jaipur is a very, very important tourist center. आप जाके देखिए कचरा, मेन रोड्स पे कचरा है, जो मतलब जहाँ टूरिस्ट जाते हैं, forget about हम लोगों घरों के आगे. तो वो he's been trying to change our minds यार. जब वो कह रहे हैं कि सफाई रखो, clean, it was not just for hygienic reasons. कैसे टूरिस्ट आएगा वहां पे? सड़क पे बैल घूम रही है, गाय घूम रहा है, कुत्ता घूम रहा है, ठीक है ना, सबकी जगह है. मैं तो जैन हूँ और जीव में, हर जीव में विश्वास रखता हूँ, लेकिन वो गंदगी होती है ना उससे.
जी सर.
अब कैसे टूरिस्ट आएंगे आपके यहाँ पे? आप जाइए कहीं टूरिस्ट पे, वो पैसे भीख मांगने वाले इकट्ठे रहते हैं, पुट्स ऑफ पीपल, आपको पुट ऑफ कर देगा, ठीक है. गाइड आपके पीछे लगाते हैं, 10 लोग नाक पे दम करते हैं आपके, सामान बेचने वाले. We just not created that mindset and infrastructure. ना फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है, ना अच्छे सस्ते होटल हैं, या तो 5 स्टार होटल्स हैं, वो बहुत महंगे, हर एक टूरिस्ट के बस की नहीं है, और या फिर होटल्स में साफ सुथरे नहीं है, वहाँ एक स्टैंडर्ड क्वालिटी नहीं है. तो ये इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्ड करने की जरूरत है. रोड कनेक्टिविटी खराब है. अब जयपुर दिल्ली हाईवे पे मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, मैं वंस इन अ व्हाइल आता हूँ. द जयपुर sorry, the Haryana leg of it is so bad.
अच्छा.
तो हाँ, अगर आपको स्पॉन्डिलाइटिस नहीं हो जाएगा, ये स्थिति है. and this is one of the most busy highways. तब तक जब तक हम लोग ये सब नहीं करेंगे, सफाई नहीं करेंगे, जो बाहर का आदमी है उसको इज्जत नहीं देंगे, ठीक से बात नहीं करेंगे, परेशान नहीं करेंगे, कौन आएंगे आपके? इसके लिए हम सब जिम्मेदार हैं. सिस्टम क्या करेगा इसमें? भाई मेरा बिहेवियर टूरिस्ट के प्रति इसमें सिस्टम क्या कर सकता है? आप और मैं, हमें अपना बिहेवियर ठीक करना है, साफ रखना है। गंदा तो हम ही करते हैं, कचरा हम ही फेंकते हैं, कोई बाहर के आगे तो फेंकता नहीं कचरा। और हम लोग बाहर जाते हैं, वी बिकम वेरी डिफरेंट पीपल। हम भी सब गंदगी नहीं फेंकते हैं, कूड़ा नहीं बाहर फेंकते। तो इसका तो हमें अपने आप को सवाल पूछना पड़ेगा। और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की जरूरत है, बिल्कुल सही बात है। जितना ज्यादा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बढ़ेगा उतने टूरिस्ट आएंगे। बट हमारा भी मेन टूरिज्म है जो इंडिया में, वो डोमेस्टिक है। जो कनेक्टिविटी नहीं है, सड़कें अच्छी नहीं है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, अच्छे होटल नहीं है। अच्छे होटल हैं तो बहुत महंगे हैं, वो हर एक टूरिस्ट अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकता है। ठीक है ना? हमने जगहों को अट्रैक्टिव नहीं बनाया है। अब टिल वी डोंट हैव दोस थिंग्स कि टूरिस्ट आए तो 3 दिन आराम से रह सके, वो भी तो काम बहुत बाकी है, गुंजाइश बहुत है इसकी। तो फोकस है, कोशिश, प्रयत्न जारी है, ऐसा नहीं प्रयत्न नहीं हो रहे हैं। बट वी नीड टू, ऑल ऑफ अस हैव टू वर्क ऑन इट कलेक्टिवली। सम थ्रू बिहेवियरल अप्रोच, सम सफाई रखने के हिसाब से, वो तो हमारा निजी है, कचरा बाहर नहीं फेंका, अपने आप शहर साफ हो जाएगा। और कुछ ऑफ कोर्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्डिंग व्हिच फॉर व्हिच गवर्नमेंट हैज टू आइदर क्रिएट सर्कमस्टेंसेस और इन्वेस्ट। But this